Chapter 2199. The power of the saint level was colliding, and the space within a radius of tens of miles was shaking. The terrifying saint level ripples spread out, dispersing the layers of chaotic mist. Even though the chaotic divine soil was extremely stable, at this moment, spatial cracks that looked like black lightning appeared. However, the void of the chaotic divine soil was extremely stable, and those spatial cracks disappeared in an instant like real black lightning bolts. The self-healing ability of this chaotic world was truly very strong. Kill. The silver flood dragon was incomparably ferocious. After losing the blood immortality peach, he hated the entire human race. His ambitions were higher than the heavens. He originally wanted to transform into the most powerful true dragon, and he even had the chance to become the legendary invincible dragon ancestor. But now, it was impossible. He had lost the blood immortality peach. Even if he could transform into a real dragon, he would only be an ordinary real dragon. This step was extremely important for a flood dragon to transform into a dragon. It directly determined the physique and bloodline of a flood dragon after transforming into a dragon. When transforming into a dragon, the purer the true dragon blood essence that was produced from the body of a flood dragon, the stronger the true dragon body would be, and the more potential it would possess. However, without the help of the blood immortality peach, the true dragon that transformed into a true dragon would not have a pure bloodline. As such, even if it succeeded in transforming into a true dragon, it would lose the right to become a true dragon. The silver flood dragon attacked in a frenzy. The dragon pearl blossomed with divine light and actually forced back the yin-yang divine diagram that rushed out from the yin-yang mirror. This shocked the human race saints. Shua. The human saint flew up into the sky and dodged the Dragon Ball's attack. Boom. The Dragon Ball smashed over, shattering the space where the human race saint had been standing into thousands of pieces. A huge hole appeared in the sky. This guy is crazy. The human race saint was both shocked and furious. He did not want to risk his life against a madman. Dragon soars to the 9 heavens. The silver serpent soared into the sky and used a great technique. In an instant, it arrived in front of the human race saint and whipped its tail at him. This old flood dragon already possessed the characteristics of the dragon clan, but it had yet to truly transform into a dragon. So fast. The shock of the human race saint was no small matter. Buzz. The yin-yang mirror trembled, and the black and white light of the yin-yang mirror rushed out from the mirror towards the sweeping dragon tail. The power of yin and yang intertwined, and the power of the great path was mighty. Bang! When the silver flood dragon's tail struck the yin-yang diagram, the yin-yang diagram immediately dimmed. The yin-yang Dao pattern formed by the interweaving power of yin and yang actually showed signs of collapsing. What a powerful physical body! The human saints retreated once again. This flood dragon was truly powerful. No wonder it dared to go around killing human geniuses without fear. The human saint knew that it would be difficult for him to take down the WM, so he decisively retreated. He did not want to have a true life and death battle with the WM. The battle ended just like that, but it was an ending that no one had expected. The flood dragon was too ferocious. Even the saints of the human race had to retreat. When the news spread, all the geniuses of the human race were shocked to the extreme. All the geniuses who had entered the chaotic divine soil were terrified. H, that old man has a good idea. Someone whispered. Someone has to deal with this flood dragon. These old fellows are too cautious. Someone said something like that. The saints of the human race wouldn't just watch as the flood dragon wreaked havoc and slaughtered the geniuses of the human race. However, some of them didn't want to take the risk, while the majority of them were still observing. Chimph, is there no one in the human race? The vicious flood dragon shouted loudly. Its voice traveled far into the distance, forcing back a saint from the human race. This made him even more arrogant and insufferably arrogant. At this time, the geniuses of the human race all became cautious, afraid of encountering this flood dragon. Rumble. Not long after, an incomparably shocking sound came from a mountain range. The whole mountain range shook, and all the living beings in the surrounding area were alarmed. The sky above the mountain range was covered with dark clouds. From time to time, Dazzling lightning flashed in the dark clouds. Destructive energy was condensing. These were tribulation clouds. Someone was undergoing a tribulation. Someone is trying to break through to the saint realm so quickly. Many human geniuses who were walking in the mountains were alarmed. The tribulation clouds shrouded the heaven and earth, dispersing the chaotic mist. The destructive energy condensed in the sky was too strong. Soon, many figures appeared in the vicinity of the mountain range. After the news of someone undergoing a tribulation spread out, no one wanted to miss such an opportunity. Of course, some people with ulterior motives were thinking about how to stop the person in the mountain from undergoing the tribulation. Only one person could become a saint in a lifetime. Therefore, no one wanted to see the person in the mountain pass the tribulation successfully. Some saints even secretly interfered with the person's tribulation. The tribulation descended. Black tribulation clouds fell from the sky. Destructive lightning flashed from the tribulation clouds, bringing with it a terrifying and despairing destructive energy. This heavenly tribulation lasted for about 24 hours. A mountain range was reduced to ashes. In the end, someone saw a person crumble under the heavenly tribulation. Many human geniuses witnessed this scene. They all looked solemn. The success rate of breaking through to the saint realm was too low. Not many among them could survive. The tribulation of a saint was very terrifying. If one couldn't endure it, then his body and soul would be destroyed by the tribulation. The person in the mountain range was a good example. Roar. Just when the group of human geniuses was about to leave, a roar was heard from afar. A silver flood dragon rushed over from the sky like a mountain. "It's that flood dragon!" Someone yelled. What? The group of geniuses was shocked. They never thought that the flood dragon that killed the human geniuses would appear at this time and attack them. Collect. A human genius performed a great art. A golden gourd flew out from his body. The mouth of the gourd was aimed at the silver flood dragon. A heaven-devouring energy surged out from the golden gourd. Swoosh! The silver flood dragon was enveloped by the devouring energy from the golden gourd. Then, the silver flood dragon shrunk rapidly and disappeared into the golden gourd. Witnessing this scene, all the human geniuses were dumbfounded. Their eyes almost fell to the ground. The legendary peerless serpent was taken away just like that. The golden gourd emitted a faint golden glow. It flew down from the sky and landed in the hands of a purple-robed young man. What flood dragon? Just SOSO. The purple-robed young man looked at the golden gourd in his hands and said in disdain, "It can't be. That flood dragon was really taken away." A black-robed young man mumbled to himself on a short mountain far away. Chapter 2200. Everyone was dumbfounded. Even the purple-robed youth himself was dumbfounded. He had actually sucked the flood dragon into the golden gourd. The flood dragon's infamy was earned through slaughter. Even human saints had to retreat from it, but it had been sucked into the golden gourd by a human youth. This was too unbelievable. How is this possible? All the human geniuses couldn't believe their eyes. Could this golden gourd be a supreme divine treasure refined by an ancient renhuang? Or perhaps it was a treasure left behind by a supreme? At this moment, the golden gourd in the youth's hands had faint golden runes on it. These ancient runes gave off a boundless and ancient aura. Although this golden gourd is extraordinary, it's definitely not a supreme divine treasure refined by an ancient renhuang. Someone muttered. This should be a divine treasure refined by an ancient saint. A white-haired old man said. The human genius in the mountain's tribulation had alarmed many people. There were geniuses of the current era among them, as well as a living antique. Although these antiques hadn't become saints and had been waiting since ancient times, their knowledge wasn't something ordinary people could compare to. This is truly heaven-defying. That flood dragon seems to be an ancient saint as well. The mysterious black-robed man muttered in the distance. He couldn't understand how the golden gourd in the youth's hands could be so powerful. Just who stole the blood immortality peach? A bald monk murmured in the sky. He had become someone else's scapegoat and was chased by this flood dragon. He was so depressed that he almost coughed up blood. At this moment, the purple-robed youth suddenly exclaimed. Countless cracks suddenly appeared on the golden gourd in his hand. Everyone couldn't help but be startled by this change, and they all felt a sense of unease. Boom! Before the purple-robed young man could react, the golden gourd in his hand had already exploded. An extremely powerful force suddenly erupted. A layer of divine light surged from the purple-robed young man's body, protecting him. However, the explosive power was too strong. His hands turned into a bloody mist in an instant. Then, the layer of divine light that surged from his body collapsed. The purple-clothed youth only had time to let out a furious roar before his entire body was blasted into a bloody mist by the destructive force that spread out, and his body and soul were annihilated. Roar! A dragon's roar rang out, and a silver figure soared into the sky. A powerful and violent aura instantly enveloped the entire world, as if a peerless demon lord had descended. "It's that flood dragon," someone exclaimed. At this time, the flood dragon that burst out of the golden gourd had already spat out a mouthful of divine fire towards the nearby human geniuses. That mouthful of divine fire instantly ignited and enveloped half of the sky, enveloping more than a dozen human geniuses in it. Ah! Roar! I don't want to die. A few human geniuses screamed miserably as they were set ablaze. In just a few breaths of time, those human geniuses were burned to ashes. Even their primordial spirits couldn't escape. Both their bodies and souls were destroyed. The remaining 7 or 8 geniuses held on bitterly. They had secret treasures bestowed upon them by the ancestors of their clans, which allowed them to temporarily block the divine fire. "Flood dragon, I'll kill you." 2 old men charged over from afar. One of the human geniuses who had just been burned to death was the most outstanding genius in their clans. The genius who had the highest chance of becoming a saint had actually died just like that. This was enough to make the 2 old men go crazy. Kill. Without any hesitation, the 2 old men directly used great techniques and attacked the flood dragon. 9 divine swords shot out from one of the black-clothed old men. Every single sword shone with blinding light, and the light from each sword was different. 9 colored swords. "That person is the 9 Swords King from ancient times," someone cried out. That person seemed to have seen through the origins of the black-clothed old man. In ancient times, an expert of the way of the sword had once appeared. This expert had used 9 divine swords to dominate the primordial world, making a huge name for himself. What 9 Swords King? Go to hell. The flood dragon was extremely ferocious. It swept its tail towards the 9 resplendent streaks of sword light. There were runes on the dragon's tail. Clang. A series of metallic clangs rang out. The 9 divine swords pierced the dragon's tail, but they were unable to break through the flood dragon's defense. The 9 divine swords were swept away by the dragon's tail. At this moment, another old man made his move. This old man wielded a bronze hammer and directly smashed it towards the flood dragon. On the surface of the bronze hammer, dazzling bolts of lightning shot out. Each bolt of lightning was as large as a mountain, tearing apart the void between heaven and earth. A destructive power radiated from the hammer. It was like the descent of divine lightning, causing everyone's hearts to palpitate. It was like they were facing the might of heaven. Thunder God's hammer. The flood dragon seemed to be shocked. It seemed to know the origin of this divine treasure and was very afraid. It actually left an afterimage on the spot and retreated. Kill. At this moment, the 9 Swords King was shocked. He took back the 9 divine swords and then rode them towards the flood dragon. "Where do you think you're going?" The old man with the thunder god's hammer also put it away and chased after the flood dragon. Such a great feud would definitely not end until one of them was dead. In the great clan that the 2 old men belonged to, no one could become a saint. The flood dragon had destroyed their hope. However, the flood dragon was extremely strong. It seemed to be able to deal with the 2 saints with ease. It fought and retreated at the same time. The battlefield moved quickly. The 3 experts entered the endless mountains. This was a battle between saints. It was extremely fierce. Mountains were being crushed into dust. It seemed like the world was going to be destroyed. If such a battle were to take place in the human world, it would be a disaster. Countless living beings would die, and the ancestral planet would probably be affected. That flood dragon is indeed cunning. In the distance, the mysterious man retreated. If the flood dragon knew that he was the one who stole the blood peach, he would be in big trouble. The bald monk also retreated decisively. One should know that he didn't want to be chased by the flood dragon again. This time, he didn't have a life-saving secret treasure. The mysterious man in black and the bald monk left. No one noticed them because everyone's attention was attracted by the earth-shattering battle in the depths of the mountains. The power of the saints spread in all directions. All the experts were shocked. Chapter 2201. The Fluctuation of a Sage. Is a sage coming out? A voice came from the valley. Boss is coming out. At this moment, a person outside the valley woke up from his meditation. This person was Ji Changkong from the ancestral star of crepe myrtle. He had decided to follow Ji Yufei. He could see that Ji Yufei had limitless potential. He might be a sage in this generation. He would not be at a disadvantage to follow such a person. The guy who plotted against him back then was probably a powerful figure in his clan now. 10,000 years was too long. He knew nothing about the situation of the Ji clan in the ancestral star of crepe myrtle. It would be difficult for him to take revenge. After all, he was alone while the other party had the advantage in numbers. If he followed Ji Yufei, he might be able to get justice for himself in the future. The motivation for Ji Changkong's survival was hatred. Back then, he was about to succeed. However, he was plotted against by that person and failed on the verge of success. He was filled with hatred and unwillingness. At this moment, there was no movement in the valley. Ji Yufei was still in seclusion. He was still trying to break through to the sage level. He would not come out so easily if he did not succeed. His opponent was too strong. The great desolate divine ape had recovered its sage-level cultivation. Ji Changkong was definitely not a match for it, even if he had a divine tool. The difference between a sage and a sage-to-be was too great. It was a gap that no one could overcome. Even a heaven-defying genius who could be invincible in the same realm would not be a match for a sage. Once a sage became a sage, it would be another world. A sage would be high above. Anyone below the sage level would be an ant. The divine sound of the great path resounded on Ji Yufei's body. 9 primordial Tao patterns appeared on his body. Tao rhymes surrounded him as if he was about to ascend. He was still lacking a little. In the end, Ji Yufei had to stop. He was still lacking a little. He could not comprehend the way of the sage. Did he really have to eat the fusing path fruit? Ji Yufei was confident that he had a deep understanding of the great path. It was enough for him to become a sage. However, when he was trying to break through to the sage level, he realized that he was still lacking. Deep in Ji Yufei's heart, he really didn't want to break through to the saint level with the help of external forces. But at this moment, he could no longer hesitate. If that monkey found him, it would be too late. If he succeeded in becoming a sage, he would no longer be afraid of that monkey. Ji Yufei took out the divine fruit. The divine fruit lay quietly in the jade box. Waves of divine light circulated around the divine fruit. It was very extraordinary. Within the divine fruit, there were great Tao fragments. It was as if a world was evolving, shocking everyone. Ji Yufei did not hesitate. He immediately ate the fruit of the way. Soon, waves of the divine sound of the great path came from his body, and the 9 primitive patterns emitted a dazzling light of the way. The originally blurry 9 primordial Tao patterns started to become clearer. Specks of divine light began to appear between Ji Yufei's eyebrows. They were the shattered fragments of the great path contained in the fruit of path. They were a corner of the great path of heaven and earth. If he could comprehend them, becoming a saint would not be a problem at all. However, since ancient times, it seemed that not many people had been able to comprehend them. This was a long process. Ji Yufei's entire body seemed to have become a stone statue. He did not move at all. The great path that he had created was being nurtured in his body. From time to time, the divine light emitted by the patterns flashed in the valley. While Ji Yufei was cultivating in seclusion, the outside world was already in chaos. Countless geniuses of the human race were fighting. In this world, only one person could become a saint. The reality was cruel. Countless geniuses of the human race were fighting, and many had already fallen. Little Baldy, if you continue to follow me, I will not be polite to you. In a certain area of the chaotic divine soil, the mysterious man in black was stopped by a bald monk. This bald monk was the one who wanted to steal the fierce flood dragon and protect it for 10,000 years. Tumph, hand over that thing. The bald monk sneered and stared at the mysterious man in black. I don't know what you are talking about. The mysterious man in black turned around and left. He did not want to pay attention to the bald monk at all. The flood dragon's thing is with you, right? The bald monk said indifferently. The mysterious man stopped when he heard this. A shocking aura spread from his body. He had no idea how the other party knew that he was the one who stole the blood peach. These baldies are so annoying. The mysterious man in black turned around and stared at the bald monk. His eyes flickered and a powerful battle intent surged from his body. Hand it over. The bald monk flipped his right hand and a purple gold arms bowl appeared in his hand. The mysterious man in black was shocked and angry when he saw the arms bowl. He thought of a person. That person was also a bald monk. Buzz. With a thought from the mysterious man, a golden sword immediately rushed out of his body. It was a golden Dao sword, and the sword gave off the ripples of sword chi of the saint level. The shadow of a golden dragon appeared on the sword. This was the Saint Emperor's golden dragon sword. Back then, after Ji Yufei obtained this sword, he gave it to He Tian. The mysterious man's identity was obvious. I've always been the one to steal from others. I didn't think that someone would dare to steal from me today. He Tian said with a smile, but the expression on his handsome face was extremely cold. So it's an old thief. No wonder. The bald monk said in realization. You're courting death. He Tian never had a good impression of the bald monk, especially the little monk Fan Xiu. That guy had always been against them and was extremely detestable. Buddha is merciful. Looks like I'll have to break the precepts today. The bald monk said very seriously. Break your head. He Tian could no longer hold it in. He directly slashed at the bald monk. The dazzling sword light immediately turned into a golden rainbow and fell on the bald monk's head. The sword chi of the saint was vast and mighty. The surrounding mist was completely dispersed by the sword chi. Saint weapon. The bald monk didn't dare to be negligent. The purple gold arms bowl in his hand flew up and emitted a boundless Buddhist light. The entire purple gold arms bowl seemed to have transformed into a divine sun that illuminated the chaotic world. An extremely powerful devouring power surged out from the purple gold arms bowl, devouring all the chilling sword chi that descended from the sky. Clang! The Saint King's golden dragon sword returned to its original form and viciously slashed at the arms bowl, sending it flying. At the same time, the Saint King's golden dragon sword was also sent flying by the Buddhist force that erupted from the arms bowl. This. Chapter 2202. Good fella, another little baldy pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. He Tian was taken aback. He never thought that his opponent would be able to withstand his attack so easily. One should know that the Saint Emperor's golden dragon sword was not an ordinary saint weapon. It was a saint weapon refined by a saint emperor of the demon race. It was much stronger than ordinary saint weapons. The saint emperor of the demon race was an existence comparable to the immortal venerables of the human race. The immortal venerables of the human race were supreme existences below the extreme supremes. Only a human sovereign could suppress them. One could imagine how powerful the saint emperor of the demon race was. Could that arms bowl be a Buddhist treasure left behind by a Buddhist venerable? He Tian muttered to himself. He stared at the bald monk in front of him and his eyes lit up. No wonder this little baldy could survive the pursuit of the flood dragon. With the protection of the Buddhist treasure of a Buddhist venerable, it would not be easy for the flood dragon to kill this little baldy. Hand over that thing and we might be able to become friends. The bald monk held the arms bowl in his hand and said to He Tian with a smile. Buddhist light flowed on his face, giving off a sense of peace and tranquility. You're really interesting. You actually dare to do this in front of your grandfather? He Tian laughed. He did not believe a single word that the little baldy said. If the little baldy's cultivation was higher than his, he would have killed him a long time ago. Hehe, it seems that I've met a kindred spirit. The bald monk smiled embarrassedly and said, only a ghost would be kindred spirit with you. He Tian said. He did not know where this guy was when he first made his debut. Only the old tortoise in the heaven realm was his kindred spirit. Then I have nothing else to say. Let's fight. The bald monk said and stretched out his hand, displaying a great Buddhist magic. His right hand grabbed at He Tian. His palm instantly grew infinitely large and enveloped the space in front of him. This was a Buddhist grand technique, the heavenly Buddha palm. It was as if a real heavenly Buddha was making a move. Powerful Buddhist energy spread out from the golden palm. In the center of the palm, a swastika Buddhist seal could be vaguely seen. Kid, you're still too inexperienced. As He Tian spoke, his body shook and countless formation runes immediately rushed out of his body, imprinting themselves into the void around him. Buzz. The void trembled and countless runes appeared in the void. The runes interweaved and formed a huge formation. This was a great technique that could form a formation in the void. This was a great magical power that only a formation grandmaster could display. The little monk was truly shocked when he saw this scene. Never had he imagined that the young man before him would actually be a formation grandmaster. Shua. Within the huge formation, terrifying sword lights rushed out. Every single sword light contained a terrifying destructive force. They shot up into the sky and met the heavenly Buddha palm that was coming down from the sky. He Tian was extremely domineering. He stood in the middle of the huge formation, gathering spiritual qi from all directions. He and the formation became one, displaying the strongest power of the huge formation. The golden hand that was coming down from the sky was pierced through by the destructive sword light and dissipated into the void. Buzz. The destructive sword light vibrated. After piercing through the huge Buddha palm, the sword light did not dissipate. Instead, it continued piercing towards the little monk. Seeing this, the little monk took out the purple gold alms bowl in his hand. Heaven-devouring force gushed out from the alms bowl, sucking all the destructive sword lights into the alms bowl. Rumble. Just as the little monk dispelled He Tian's sword light, the void around them started vibrating. Then, countless runes rushed out from He Tian's body. The runes interweaved in the void, forming a huge formation that emitted terrifying vibrations. What? The little monk, who was surrounded by the huge formations, could not help but be shocked. His opponent's formation technique was too brilliant. He could form a formation with just a thought. This technique was too shocking. The little monk could feel that every single formation around him was emitting a murderous aura. There were a total of 10 killing formations that trapped the little monk. There was the yin-yang formation, the 7 slaughtering formation, the heaven punishment formation, and so on. Every single one of the killing formations was not simple and was extremely dangerous. You're not qualified to play with me, unless the little monk Fan Xiu comes personally. He Tian said proudly. His mastery of formations had already reached the peak of perfection. Even if the little monk Fan Xiu came personally, he was confident that he could fight him. Little monk Fan Xiu. The little monk who was trapped in the 10 killing formations was stunned. Based on what he knew, there was no little monk named Fan Xiu in the Eastern Holy Land. That little monk Fan Xiu must not be an ordinary person to make this guy hesitate. There's no point in talking anymore. Hand over everything you have and get the hell out of here. He Tian did not waste any more words with the little monk. He was already eyeing the Buddhist treasure in the little monk's hand. A Buddhist treasure left behind by a Buddhist venerable was definitely priceless. You think you have me? The little monk who was trapped by the 10 killing formations was still calm. The purple gold alms bowl in his hand emitted a Buddhist light that enveloped him. Even though the 10 killing formations were powerful, they could not hurt the little monk in a short amount of time. Of course, He Tian had yet to activate the 10 killing formations. He only used them to trap the annoying little monk and did not actually kill him. The little monk's pink cheeks were flushed and his expression was innocent. He Tian knew that this was only the little monk's outer appearance. This guy was definitely an old monster. Just like the little monk Fan Xiu, he was unfathomable. However, he was not afraid of this little monk. As long as the other party was not a saint, he had the ability to fight. Hehe, I don't eat little monks. I only know how to smash their bald heads. Mahakala said with a hideous smile. He had a fiendish look on his face. Due to the little monk Fan Xiu, he didn't have a good impression of Buddhism. That's all for today. I won't be so lucky the next time I meet you. The bald little monk, who was trapped in the 10 great killing formations, said these words. What? Hearing this, He Tian could not help but laugh out loud. It was as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. Was this guy crazy? It seemed like he was the one who had the upper hand and the one who was trapped was him. It seems like you won't know whose fist is harder if I don't show you what I'm capable of. He Tian was about to make his move. However, at this moment, countless Buddhist runes suddenly surged out from the body of the bald monk who was trapped in the 10 major killing arrays. A mass of Buddhist light instantly enveloped him. Whoosh! Chapter 2203. What? He Tian was shocked when he saw that the bald monk had escaped right under his nose. How could this be possible? One had to know that he had already sealed the void of this part of the world. Whatever major teleportation mystique or shadow displacement art, all of them were useless. No one could escape. But now, the truth spoke louder than words. How did he do it? He Tian put away the 10 killing formations. He couldn't understand how the other party could escape under such circumstances. Could it be that the Buddhist escape technique was more powerful than other escape techniques? This was definitely not a good thing for He Tian. This bald monk had been added to his list of dangerous people. Rumble, at this moment, a series of rumbling noises came from afar. It sounded like muffled thunder. The battle between the flood dragon and the 2 sages was still going on. This was a battle between sages. It attracted everyone's attention. However, He Tian didn't dare to stay and immediately escaped. If the flood dragon found out that he had stolen the blood peach, he would be in big trouble. The blood peach was a life-saving medicine. He Tian wouldn't eat the blood peach right now. Because with that blood immortality peach, it was equivalent to having an extra life. He Tian's figure quickly disappeared in the dark. After He Tian left, the void at the place where the bald monk disappeared suddenly shook like water. Swoosh! A figure walked out from the void. This person was actually the little monk with a bald head. TSK, what an idiot. How could he be tricked by me? The bald monk looked in the direction where He Tian had left and muttered to himself. There was a faint Buddhist light circling around his body. He looked like an otherworldly Buddha. It turned out that the bald monk didn't escape. He just used the Buddhist kingdom in the palm magic power and escaped into the internal world that he had opened up. The monk was a little surprised that he was able to trick He Tian using this method. Actually, He Tian was really careless this time. Of course, he had something on his mind and didn't want to stay for long. He just wanted to get as far away from the flood dragon as possible. The little bald monk suddenly disappeared into the void. He Tianxia subconsciously thought that the little bald monk had used some kind of secret technique to escape. If he knew that the little bald monk had merely entered his inner world and used such a simple method to deceive him, he would definitely be so angry that he would vomit blood. The bald monk didn't stay and quickly left the place. The battle between sages continued. The 2 human race sages teamed up to fight the flood dragon, but it was hard to tell who was the winner. The 9-sword emperor was a ruthless character. Moreover, the human race sage who teamed up with the 9-sword emperor had obtained the inheritance of the ancient thunder god. He wielded the thunder god hammer and it was extremely powerful. If the flood dragon could really kill the 2 sages easily, then it would really be heaven-defying. The battle ended after a day and night. No one knew the outcome of the battle. The flood dragon didn't die, but it left with serious injuries. The 2 sages didn't have it easy either. Some people guessed that the 2 sages and the flood dragon had probably both suffered heavy injuries. When the news of the flood dragon's injuries spread, the other human race sages started to move. Some people wanted to take advantage of the flood dragon's injuries to eradicate it. In particular, the factions that had their geniuses killed by the flood dragon wanted to tear the flood dragon to pieces. However, the flood dragon was very careful. It was bent on hiding, so even the powerful human race sages couldn't find it in a short time. Human race. As the human race sages searched for the flood dragon, a silver flood dragon was soaking in a pool of black water in a bottomless abyss in the depths of the chaotic divine soil. The pool of black water was not simple. It wasn't big, but the spiritual chi it contained was extremely huge. The black water was definitely a kind of divine liquid. The flood dragon hid in the bottomless abyss and was using the black water to recuperate. The wounds on its body were gradually healing, and its body was once again full of vitality. Just as the flood dragon hid in the bottomless abyss to heal, the divine sound of the great path came from the valley where Jiu Fei was. He had eaten the fusing fruit of the way and seemed to have merged with the heavenly path, forgetting everything. Waves of the divine sound of the great path came from his body, as if a supreme being was preaching. 9 kinds of Tao patterns appeared on his body and gradually became clear. Every Tao pattern seemed to contain a world within it. At the same time, the inner world inside Jiu Fei's body was also changing. As his cultivation level increased, the inner world was also expanding, especially the inner world in the Mudpill Palace between his eyebrows. Rumble. In the Mudpill Palace, the chaotic chi was vast and mighty. A world was evolving, and the void and the earth were constantly growing. This world was devouring the chaotic chi. The 4 primitive forces of earth, water, wind, and fire were wreaking havoc in this world and the chaotic chi. At this time, in the position of his heart, a divine pearl of heaven and earth was vibrating. It was the purgatory path's origin of heaven and earth. At this time, the entire purgatory path changed color, and the sun and moon were dim. However, the purgatory path was, after all, one of the 6 paths refined by the legendary Buddhist Lord. It was like a real big world. As Jiu Fei's cultivation level increased, it was still difficult for him to take away such a world. However, even if it was difficult for him to take away this world, he had caused all kinds of terrible phenomena to appear in the purgatory path. In the divine land in his dantian, countless creatures were terrified. No one knew what was happening. The divine land was shaking as if the world was about to be destroyed. What happened? In the place where the Meng clan lived, the old clan leader said. Could it be that the Lord, in the place where the undead clan gathered, the 3 undead emperors were extremely nervous? They had vaguely guessed something. Is he really going to become a saint? Outside the valley where Jiu Fei was, Ji Changkong was muttering to himself. The vast aura of the great path coming from the valley was getting stronger and stronger. Faintly, he seemed to hear some kind of Tao sound. At this time, in the valley, Jiu Fei's entire body was shining with the divine light of the great path. His bones were shining, his organs were vibrating, and his flesh and blood were trembling. This was an extremely important transformation. From the outside to the inside, Jiu Fei's entire body was shining with divine light. A huge amount of essence chi was cleansing his martial body. 9 primitive Tao patterns were imprinted on Jiu Fei's body. They were imprinted into his martial body's flesh and bones. His entire martial body was undergoing a qualitative transformation. His flesh and bones were constantly collapsing and then reforming. In the end, Jiu Fei's entire body turned into a blood cocoon. In the blood cocoon, there seemed to be a carnate chaotic beast being nurtured. The powerful aura coming from it caused the surrounding void to ripple and crack. Chapter 2204. In the valley, the chaotic aura was vast and mighty. Jiu Fei's entire body had turned into a blood cocoon. Chaotic Tao patterns were faintly discernible inside, and the power of the great Tao was intertwining. Jiu Fei finally began the most important transformation of his life. His flesh, blood, tendons, and bones had all turned into a blood mist, constantly condensing and dispersing in the blood cocoon. In the blood cocoon, a mass of purple divine light floated. That was Jiu Fei's true spirit, a powerful life imprint. As long as his true spirit was not destroyed, he could reconstruct his martial body and not die. 9 primordial Tao patterns began to appear on the mass of purple divine light. Ji Yufei's life imprint had to be imprinted with the mark of the Great Tao in order to become an immortal saint. Of course, immortality was only relative. If he encountered an existence stronger than him, he would still be in danger of dying. In the purple divine light, a black divine sword was faintly discernible. It was the ninth heaven star's sword that Ji Yufei had refined himself. There were also 9 Tao patterns faintly discernible on the body of the ninth heaven star's sword. The ninth heaven star's sword had originally been imprinted with the 9 ancient words of the martial scripture, but at this time, the 9 ancient words were constantly evolving, gradually turning into 9 primordial Tao patterns. The sage's heavenly tribulation was very important. The ninth heaven star's sword also had to undergo this heavenly tribulation in order to truly become a sacred weapon. Ji Yufei's sword had been tempered step by step. With his cultivation, it had become stronger step by step, accompanying him all the way until now. As a warrior, the strongest weapon was himself. However, Ji Yufei had an unusual idea. He wanted to use the means of the immortal Tao to temper a battle sword that was most suitable for him. Buzz. In the purple divine light, there was a series of sword hums. It seemed that the ninth heaven star's sword also knew that this was an opportunity for it, a chance to become a sacred weapon. Very good. Let us see how terrifying this legendary sage's heavenly tribulation is. There was a wave of spiritual will coming from the purple divine light. The spiritual will was filled with confidence, as though it did not take the sage's heavenly tribulation seriously at all. Rumble. In the sky above the valley, the chaotic aura was vast and mighty. There was a faint sound of thunder, as though it came from the 9 heavens, giving off a very distant feeling. The moment the thunder rang out, all the sage-level lifeforms in the chaotic divine soil were shocked. Someone was trying to break through to the sage level so quickly. This was a sign that the saint-level heavenly tribulation was about to descend. It hadn't been long since the last saint-level heavenly tribulation, but those people still couldn't help it. They knew that there were some old-timers who had been waiting for an opportunity to reach sage ascension. It was unknown just how many quasi-sage old-timers had entered the primal chaos godsoil this time. These people had been waiting for too long. They couldn't wait any longer. However, they were wrong this time. The one undergoing the tribulation wasn't one of those old geezers, but a genius of the present age. Someone is undergoing tribulation again. Old Black, we'll go take a look. When He Tian heard the news, he immediately headed towards the valley where Ji Yufei was. At this time, the other geniuses also gathered in the area where the sage's heavenly tribulation was about to descend. The sage's heavenly tribulation was extremely terrifying. Since ancient times, not many people had been able to succeed, even in ancient times. He's really going to undergo tribulation. Outside the valley, Ji Changkong was extremely shocked. This Ji Yufei was really heaven-defying. He actually attracted the sage's heavenly tribulation. The pressure from the sky made his heart palpitate. Ji Changkong didn't dare to be negligent. He immediately retreated. He didn't want to attract his sage's heavenly tribulation because of the power that attracted the tribulation. As long as someone was undergoing tribulation, no one would dare to be near the person undergoing the tribulation. It should be known that the heavenly tribulation did not descend without reason. It was caused by the power of the person undergoing the tribulation. This kind of power was very mysterious and unfathomable. No one knew how this power appeared. Whenever someone's cultivation reached a certain level, this power would appear. Other cultivators would avoid this kind of power. They wouldn't dare to come in contact with it. Even someone as strong as a sage would have some misgivings about this power. It should be known that there were extreme supremes above the sage level. If a supreme tribulation was attracted, even 10 lives wouldn't be enough. Rumble. The thunder from the sky gradually became louder. The chaotic mist that enveloped this region started to dissipate. Bolts of lightning appeared in the pitch-black sky. In this chaotic divine soil, there were no stars yet. The sky was pitch black and there was no starlight at all. Someone is undergoing tribulation again. I'm afraid a sage will really appear in this generation. A white-haired old man appeared on a mountain peak in the distance. He looked in the direction of the valley. The chaotic chi in the valley was vast and mighty. It blocked everyone's vision. Even spiritual sense couldn't enter the valley. At the same time, thunder could be heard in another place in the chaotic divine soil. It came from a small island in the depths of the chaotic divine sea, far away from the primal chaos mainland. They are undergoing tribulation at the same time. An ancient sage was incomparably shocked. It was rare to see people undergoing tribulation at the same time, even in the Great Desolate Era. In the depths of the chaotic divine sea, an unimaginable existence was undergoing tribulation. Terrifying lightning struck down from the sky. Every bolt of lightning tore the chaotic heaven and earth apart. A destructive aura that made even sages' hearts palpitate spread out from the depths of the chaotic divine sea. An ancient sage immediately rushed into the chaotic divine sea, wanting to know who was undergoing tribulation. The chaotic divine sea was a boundless divine sea in the chaotic divine soil. This divine sea hid most of the remnants of chaos in the entire chaotic divine soil. Roar. Just as the heavenly tribulation was triggered, earth-shattering beast roars came from the surroundings of the small island. A mountain-sized remnant of chaos was enraged. Someone actually dared to trigger a sage heavenly tribulation right under its nose. It was really courting death. However, the remnant of chaos didn't dare to attack. Instead, it directly retreated into the distance. It was already too late to attack now. Even if it could kill the ant on the small island, it would be tainted by the power of the heavenly tribulation. In this part of the sea, other remnants of chaos were alarmed and had no choice but to retreat. Boom! A dazzling bolt of lightning cut through the void and landed on the small island. With just one strike, the entire island turned into ashes and disappeared. There are actually two people undergoing tribulation at the same time. The movement of the sage heavenly tribulation was too great. Even in the depths of the chaotic divine sea, the waves of the heavenly tribulation reached the primal chaos mainland. Everyone was dumbfounded. Someone actually wants to fight with me for the opportunity to become a sage first. Chapter 2205. The opportunity to become a saint was very important. After all, there could only be one saint in a generation. In other words, as long as someone became a saint in this generation, no one else could become a saint. However, this generation was full of variables, and no one knew what would happen. Rumble, the great path of heaven and earth rumbled, and streaks of dazzling lightning lit up the dark world. With the valley as the center, the chaotic mist within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles was dispersed. Above the pitch-black sky, an unprecedentedly powerful heavenly might descended. The heavenly way would sense any living being that wanted to challenge the heavenly way, and send down the most powerful heavenly tribulation in the world to punish those who dared to offend the heavenly way. Of course, although the heavenly tribulation of a saint was terrifying, there was still a chance of survival. In particular, those who became a saint through sheer strength could use their extremely powerful strength to break through the restraints of the great path of heaven and earth and become a saint. Becoming a saint through sheer strength was the most difficult of all the paths to becoming a saint. However, if one could reach the end of the most difficult path, their achievements would be limitless. This was the path that Jiu Fei was taking. If he could successfully become a saint, he would be much more powerful than ordinary saints. What's going on? Why do I sense a familiar aura? At this moment, He Tian had already arrived nearby. He stared at the valley in front of him and activated the yin-yang divine eye, wanting to see into the valley. However, he realized that no matter how he activated the yin-yang divine eye, he still could not see the appearance of the person who had triggered the heavenly tribulation in the valley. There seemed to be a chaotic void evolving in the valley, and it was difficult for any divine will or divine eye to see what was inside. Who is it? Why do I have this feeling? He Tian's expression was extremely solemn at this moment. The person who had triggered the heavenly tribulation of a saint in the valley should be someone he knew, but he could not recall who that person was at the moment. In fact, it was no wonder that He Tian could not recognize Jiu Fei at the moment. After all, Jiu Fei's aura had changed fundamentally from when he was on the soaring dragon ancestral star. Buzz. Just as He Tian was feeling bewildered, a sword chime was heard. Could it be? At that moment, He Tian's eyes widened in disbelief. It's you. While He Tian was still in shock, a voice suddenly came from the side. He Tian turned to look in the direction of the voice, and he saw that a burly young man was already standing less than 300 meters away from him. This person's entire body was filled with mighty dragon qi, and there were vague dragon shadows in the void around him. His entire person was like an ancient fierce dragon, giving off a strong sense of oppression. Azure Dragon. He Tian's pupils shrank when he saw the young man. This young man was the current Azure Dragon of the Soaring Dragon Ancestral Star, one of the 4 ancient clans of the southern wilderness. Where is Jiyu Fei? Azure Dragon asked directly. Back then, he had been defeated by Jiyu Fei and nearly lost the title of the Azure Dragon tribe. However, this was not necessarily a bad thing for the Azure Dragon tribe. Now, the Azure Dragon had truly grown up and had the ability to break through to the saint level. Why are you looking for him? Do you want to be defeated again? He Tian looked at Azure Dragon and suddenly said with a smile. This time, he will be the only one who will be defeated. Azure Dragon was very confident. After experiencing so many things, his entire temperament had changed, and he gave off a sense of calmness. Haha, if I say that the person in the valley ahead is the one you are looking for, would you believe me? He Tian said. What? When the Azure Dragon heard this, his sword-like eyebrows immediately erected as a glint flashed across his eyes. What you said is true, Azure Dragon said in a deep voice. He looked at the valley ahead and saw the divine light of the great path flickering in the valley. Within the chaotic aura, he could vaguely see 9 Dao patterns faintly appearing. It seems that you are destined to be no match for Jiyu Da, He Tian said to Azure Dragon with a smile. At this moment, the expression on Azure Dragon's face was extremely complicated. It could be said that Jiyu Fei was a shadow in his heart. Ever since he started cultivating, he had never tasted defeat. However, when he encountered Jiyu Fei, he was defeated. Even with Azure Dragon's current state of mind, he had already forgotten the battle back then. However, deep in his heart, he still yearned to fight against Jiyu Fei. Azure Dragon did not say anything else. He turned around and quickly disappeared into the dark sky. Boom! Not long after the Azure Dragon left, a bolt of lightning suddenly pierced through the dark void, directly striking down from the sky towards the valley below. A destructive aura that made even the saints' hearts palpitate immediately spread. It's about to begin. He Tian calmly retreated into the distance. The other human geniuses also retreated and did not dare to get too close. Many people did not think that the person in the valley would win. After all, the tribulation of a saint was not an ordinary tribulation. The person who failed the tribulation before was an example. Therefore, many people were not worried. It was possible to become a saint in the chaotic divine soil and would not be affected by the outside world. However, whether or not one could become a saint depended on one's cultivation and luck. This time, there were definitely many geniuses from the various origins of life who had entered the chaotic divine soil. Among them, there were also many old antiques. This generation was destined to be full of variables. Buzz! A sword chime rang out from the valley. Then, everyone saw a black sword light bathed in lightning and fire shooting into the sky, pointing at the heavens. This person is very bold. An old antique said. Everyone could feel an incomparably powerful battle intent spreading from the black sword. They could not help but be shocked. Others would think about how to defend and protect themselves during the tribulation, but the person in the valley was actually fighting back against the tribulation. Could it be that this person is walking the legendary path? An old antique seemed to have noticed something and exclaimed. Defense and attack were 2 different methods of tribulation transcendence. Since ancient times, the majority of cultivators who underwent tribulation transcendence chose to be on the defensive. However, those who used strength to prove their Tao were natural fighters. Even in the face of tribulation transcendence, they would fight and unleash their unyielding battle intent. Using strength to prove your Tao. Far in the sky, a white-haired old Daoist spoke. Interesting. In another direction, a middle-aged man clad in beast hide and holding a stone staff was staring at the valley in front of him. In his eyes, heaven and earth seemed to be changing and the sun and moon were sinking. Roar! In a valley tens of millions of miles away from where Gu Fei's tribulation transcendence was a vast and mighty demonic aura. Low roars could be heard as the corpses of humans and other living beings were strewn across the valley. Chapter 2206. In the valley, Gu Fei was undergoing his heavenly tribulation. He had encountered the most powerful and dangerous heavenly tribulation he had ever encountered. A sage was a high and mighty existence that could even trample on the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao was in danger, and the heavenly tribulation that descended was absolutely terrifying. Bolts of lightning that were larger than mountains descended from the sky and struck the valley. These bolts of lightning brought with them a destructive power that could destroy everything. If one were to undergo the heavenly tribulation in the human realm, the entire ancestral planet would probably be affected. Fortunately, the chaotic divine soil was extremely stable. Even a true sage would not be able to destroy this piece of divine soil. The heavenly tribulation of a sage was having a limited effect on the chaotic divine soil. Just as Gu Fei was undergoing his heavenly tribulation, someone else was also undergoing his heavenly tribulation in the depths of the chaotic divine sea. Someone was trying to break through to the sage level, and the heavenly tribulation that this person triggered was incomparably vast. It was just the beginning of the heavenly tribulation, but it had already turned the small island that the person was on into ashes. Towering waves were set off in the sea within a radius of thousands of miles. The power of the great Tao was vast, and within the heavenly tribulation, there was an incomparably strong vitality that came out. That person did not die, and was still fighting against the heaven realm. However, compared to Gu Fei, this person was much more cautious. He did not dare to face the heavenly tribulation head-on like Gu Fei. Amidst the lightning, countless inscriptions intertwined to form a light screen, blocking all the lightning that came crashing down from the sky. A vortex appeared on the light screen, dissipating all the power of the lightning that came crashing down. This was a method to resolve the heavenly tribulation. By dispelling the power of the heavenly tribulation, there was no need to face it head-on. By doing this, one could preserve their vitality to deal with the next heavenly tribulation. This method of preserving strength was used by most cultivators to undergo the heavenly tribulation. However, Gu Fei took a different path. The path that he took determined his character. The stronger he met, the stronger he became, even when facing the heavenly tribulation. In a valley tens of millions of miles away from the chaotic divine sea, a huge blood cocoon was flickering like a huge beating heart. 9 primordial chaos Tao patterns were imprinted in the void around the blood cocoon, interweaving into a mysterious pattern. All the lightning that descended from the sky was blocked by the 9 Tao patterns. A sword light floated high in the sky. Bolts of lightning struck it. Although the sword light dimmed, the inside of the divine sword was still nurturing a life force. Bathed in the tribulation lightning, the 9 heavens star sword started to change. This was a transformation, as if a life was being nurtured. It was very mystical. The 9 heavens stars sword was transforming into a sacred artifact. And in the valley below, inside the blood cocoon, Gu Fei's muscles, bones, and flesh were regenerating. Every drop of blood was emitting chaotic divine light, and there seemed to be Tao patterns faintly visible within them. This was a type of complete transformation. Every drop of blood, and even every strand of hair, contained Tao force. It could achieve immortality. This was a divine body. Of course, Gu Fei's martial body had not truly transformed into a divine body, but it was in the process of transforming into a divine body. At this moment, Gu Fei finally understood why sages were indestructible, and how difficult it was to kill a sage. This was because every drop of blood, every piece of flesh, and every piece of flesh on a sage's body had been branded with the mark of life. This was no longer a simple rebirth of flesh and blood. Even the flesh and blood were life. Even if they were blasted into pieces, with only a drop of blood or a strand of hair left, they could still be reborn. Unless all of the mark of life of a saint was completely erased, then a saint could truly be killed. However, people who had this kind of method were probably already at the peak of the saints. Only existences like Ren Huang or celestial venerables could kill saints. The original 9 Tao patterns were constantly imprinted into Gu Fei's muscles, bones, and flesh. The divine light was vast, and the power of the divine path was washing his martial body. Soon, Ji Yufei's martial body was completely reconstructed. His entire body shone with boundless light of the great path, and the blurry nine Tao patterns began to become clear. This was the sign of becoming a saint. Ji Yufei had already understood the nine Tao patterns, which had already paved the way for him to become a saint. At this time, he had finally shaken the shackles of his cultivation. The blood-colored cocoon silently turned into ashes, and a powerful figure appeared in the valley. Vroom! A sword chime was heard, and the ninth heaven stars soared in the sky let out a vibrating sound. It turned into a beam of sword light and fell from the sky, landing in Ji Yufei's hand. Old friend, Ji Yufei caressed the ninth heaven star's sword. He suddenly felt a connection with the divine sword in his hand. Haha, very good. Then let us challenge the heavens together and fight our way out. Ji Yufei laughed out loud. He was full of confidence. He pointed the sword at the sky, and divine light shot out of his eyes. It was dozens of feet long, and a powerful battle intent exploded from his body. Boom, boom, boom. The heavens seemed to be angry. There was a thunderous sound in the sky, as if it was venting its anger. A small creature actually dared to offend the power of the heavens. This, 1,000 miles away from the valley, He Tian was extremely shocked. The destructive power that came from the sky was too strong, and it seemed to be much stronger than the heavenly tribulation of ordinary saints. Ji Yufei, in another region, the azure dragon looked in the direction of the valley where Ji Yufei was. He looked a little upset. If Ji Yufei could successfully pass the heavenly tribulation, then he would never have a chance to defeat Ji Yufei. If one did not become a saint, he was an ant. How could an ant challenge a giant dragon? This person is extraordinary. He might really succeed. An old voice muttered to himself. Not everyone was willing to see someone become a saint in front of them, because once someone else became a saint, they would not have a chance anymore. However, these people were still watching and waiting. There were people passing the heavenly tribulation in two places at the same time. Almost all the creatures that entered the chaotic divine soil were shocked. Even the local creatures were extremely shocked. The supreme bloodline of their ancestors flowed in the bodies of the descendants of the chaotic divine soil. They were extremely powerful. Since ancient times, countless people had entered the chaotic divine soil in search of an opportunity to become a saint. The geniuses of the human world were no longer geniuses after entering the chaotic divine soil. They had to face the descendants of the chaotic divine soil. In every generation, more than half of the geniuses who entered the chaotic divine soil would die. The remaining ones could leave alive, but they might not become saints. The chances of becoming a saint were very slim. In the previous generation, no one had become a saint at all. In this generation, however, someone was about to break through to the saint level. At this moment, the tribulation cloud in the sky had already pressed down. Boom! With an earth-shattering sound, a new round of the heavenly tribulation was finally launched. That is, at this moment, everyone was shocked to find that there was no tribulation lightning in the tribulation cloud. Instead, a giant beast rushed out. It was a giant beast that was completely formed by lightning. An ancient lightning devourer beast. Some of the old antiques were shocked to the extreme. The giant beast had a single horn on its head. It was as big as a mountain ridge, and its entire body was radiating millions of lightning bolts. An extremely terrifying wave of destruction spread out, shaking the entire world. It was hard to imagine that the heavenly tribulation had actually evolved into such a powerful divine beast. The ancient lightning devourer beast was a legendary divine beast born from the chaotic sea of lightning. It was born with the ability to devour lightning, and wherever it went, all life would be annihilated. The powerful tribulation lightning could turn all life into ashes. How could something like this appear? Someone muttered in disbelief. The power of the heavenly tribulation had actually transformed into an ancient beast. It was truly shocking. Could it be that the person in the valley had to defeat this beast in order to survive? Yeah. At this moment, Ji Yufei, who was standing proudly in the valley, couldn't help but be stunned when he saw this scene. However, He immediately soared into the sky and charged at the beast that was swooping down from the sky. Kill. Wielding the 9 heaven stars sword, Jiu Fei charged straight into the sea of lightning. Roar. The lightning devourer beast roared. Boundless lightning bolts spread out, covering half the world. No one could see what was happening within the lightning bolts. All they could see was a figure charging out from the valley. It's really the ancient great. By now, Haitian no longer had any doubts. The person who had charged into the sea of lightning was none other than Jiu Fei. Other than the soaring dragon ancestral star, there should be other entrances to the chaotic divine soil. One must know that the chaotic divine soil was known to connect the 3 worlds and 6 paths. In other words, as long as the chaotic divine soil was born, even people from the heaven realm would be able to enter this place. At this moment, Jiu Fei was already engaged in a fierce battle with the terrifying ancient lightning devourer beast. Roar. The lightning devourer beast opened its mouth and roared, spitting out an incomparably powerful tribulation lightning. It directly blasted Jiu Fei away. Streaks of lightning circled around his body, and his hair was emitting black smoke. A trace of blood seeped out from the corner of Jiu Fei's mouth. A single strike from the lightning devourer beast was enough to injure him. Of course, such an injury was nothing to Jiu Fei. With just a thought, Jiu Fei's injured body recovered. Buzz. The divine sword in Jiu Fei's hand was vibrating. Roar. With a roar, he gripped the divine sword tightly with both hands and slashed at the lightning devourer beast with all his might. A dazzling swordlight rushed out from Jiu Fei's hand, tearing the sky and earth apart. The entire sea of lightning was split into 2, and the swordlight ruthlessly struck the head of the lightning devourer beast. Boom! Just as Jiu Fei's sword struck the lightning devourer beast's head, the horn of the lightning devourer beast suddenly emitted a blinding electric light that was as bright as the sun. It was a ball of lightning. The ball of lightning directly shattered Jiu Fei's swordlight and smashed towards Jiu Fei. A terrifying destructive force spread out from the ball of lightning. The force was so strong that even Jiu Fei felt that his life was in danger. Kill. Chapter 2207. The ancient divine beast was extremely powerful. Although it wasn't the real lightning-devouring beast, the heavenly Tao's lightning-devouring beast was still extremely powerful. In the endless sea of lightning, Jiu Fei and the lightning-devouring beast fought endlessly. At the beginning, he was suppressed by the lightning-devouring beast. But soon, he discovered that the lightning-devouring beast's strength wasn't much different from his own. It wasn't an invincible existence. This was the heavenly Tao. It left a trace of hope for Jiu Fei, but it wouldn't really destroy him. Even so, if it was someone else, they would have already given up all hope. One must know that the ancient lightning-devouring beast was a supreme innate divine beast. Even the heavenly Tao had left a mark on it. It was enough to show how powerful this divine beast was. The heavenly Tao sensed Jiu Fei's heavenly tribulation and naturally sent down the most powerful heavenly tribulation. It wasn't a coincidence that the heavenly tribulation condensed into the lightning-devouring beast. Kill. Jiu Fei fought like a madman. Every time the 9 heaven stars' sword in his hand slashed out, a dazzling sword light would rush out and soar into the sky. The endless lightning was destroyed by his sword. However, the lightning-devouring beast was just a phantom formed by the heavenly tribulation. It wasn't the real body. No matter how fierce Jiu Fei's attack was, it was still difficult for him to destroy the phantom. Bang! Jiu Fei was sent flying by the lightning-devouring beast again. He spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. His body was surrounded by lightning. The lightning brought with it a destructive power, causing him to feel numb. Although he was sent flying by the lightning-devouring beast, Jiu Fei could clearly see that there was a mark on the head of the lightning-devouring beast. It was a smaller lightning-devouring beast. If he wanted to defeat the lightning-devouring beast, he first had to find the mark. Only by destroying the mark, the lightning-devouring beast would naturally disappear. Roar. The lightning-devouring beast roared and chased after Jiu Fei. The entire sea of lightning shook, and the destructive power rose to an unprecedented level. Very well, then let's decide life and death with one strike. Jiu Fei steadied himself in the sea of lightning. His entire body radiated chaotic divine light, and a purple divine light surged out from between his eyebrows, containing a powerful spiritual energy. Kill! Ji Yufei roared angrily. His long hair danced wildly in the wind, and his eyes were filled with madness. His battle intent was boundless. Even in the face of the sage heavenly tribulation, he still pressed forward. Boom! A world-shaking collision broke out. Ji Yufei was like a chaotic divine sun as he collided with the lightning-devouring beast that was radiating a myriad of lightning bolts. Chaotic chi and lightning shook the entire Thunder Sea. Pitch-black spatial cracks appeared, and even the chaotic divine soil, which was extremely stable, was shattered by this power. Of course, this level of destruction would not affect the chaotic divine soil. Is this person stupid? He actually dares to fight against the heavenly tribulation head-on. Someone exclaimed. Although some of them could not see what was happening in the Thunder Sea, they could tell that the person undergoing the heavenly tribulation had most likely chosen a different method. Do you want to prove your Tao through strength? An old voice was heard. Prove my Tao through strength. Everyone was extremely astonished. This was the most difficult path to becoming a sage. In the primordial times, only the martial ancestor had created such a path to becoming a sage. There were also body-tempering techniques in Buddhism and Taoism, but these techniques were fundamentally inseparable from the mysteries of Buddhism and Taoism. However, the cultivation method created by the martial ancestor was a complete path to prove one's Tao through strength. Those who chose this path were destined to pay more than other paths. Ever since the martial ancestor's lineage disappeared, the path to prove one's Tao through strength had been lost. No one was willing to try it. Now, someone had chosen this path. How could the crowd not be shocked? Rumble! The chaotic chi in the Thunder Sea was vast and mighty. Lightning tore the sky and earth apart, crushing and destroying everything. It was extremely terrifying. A figure flew out from the primal chaos chi and lightning. Beads of blood dripped from the sky. The person who flew out was Ji Yufei. At this moment, Ji Yufei was extremely miserable. He fell from the sky towards the valley below. His insanely strong martial body was charred and his vitality was extremely weak. Bang! Ji Yufei smashed into the valley and smashed into the ground, creating a human-shaped pit. At the same time, the lightning in the sky dissipated. A one-horned beast stood in the middle of the Thunder Sea, and the sound of something shattering could be heard. The heaven-devouring beast that was formed from lightning was dissipating. A brand on the heaven-devouring beast's head cracked and then disappeared. The entire heaven-devouring beast gradually dimmed and finally disappeared in the void. The terrifying heavenly tribulation disappeared. He actually survived it. Someone exclaimed. Everyone was in disbelief. To think that someone who took on the heavenly tribulation of a sage didn't die under it. This was a miracle. Guda is ferocious indeed. Up in the sky, Hei Tian couldn't help but exclaim when he saw this. It was way too difficult to cultivate one's Tao through strength. But now, there was finally someone who used such a method to pass the heavenly tribulation. However, the heavenly tribulation didn't dissipate. Ji Yufei was still in danger. He had only blocked this wave of the heavenly tribulation, and no one knew what would happen next. I'm so tired. Within the valley, Ji Yufei's voice came from the human-shaped pit on the ground. Even though he had suffered unimaginable damage, as long as his martial body had a strand of vitality, he would be able to recover in a short period of time. The Ascension secret art of the 9 secrets of the immortal Tao was the legendary undying godly art. Even if one's soul was scattered, they could reassemble it and wouldn't die. Ji Yufei used the Ascension secret art, and the strand of vitality in his body quickly grew stronger. In the end, the life force coming from his body was so strong that it shocked everyone. What a strong life force! Someone said something like that. For Ji Yufei, there wasn't much power he could really use during the heavenly tribulation. He only had the 9 heavenly stars sword and the 9 secrets of the immortal Tao. Ji Yufei didn't plan on using the extreme divine weapon in his hands unless he was in a life or death situation. Bang! A part of the ground in the valley suddenly exploded, and Ji Yufei rushed out from the ground. The charred parts of his body had already fallen off, revealing his sparkling white skin. Again, Ji Yufei looked up and pointed his sword at the heavens. At this time, Ji Yufei suddenly felt a wave of irritation. What's going on? Ji Yufei abruptly came to his senses. It was as if a mysterious force had taken effect on his body. This was a force that could induce inner demons. This is the legendary inner demon tribulation. Ji Yufei's eyes lit up. He immediately sat cross-legged on the ground and channeled his Shen Qi to fight against the mysterious power in the unseen world. Legend has it that the inner demon tribulation was extremely dangerous. Since ancient times, many people had fallen to this inner demon tribulation and turned into war demons, killing in all directions. Soon, beads of sweat the size of soybeans appeared on Ji Yufei's forehead. The expression on his face kept changing. This heavenly tribulation was really hard to guard against. At this time, Ji Yufei had already fallen into a dangerous illusion. Just as Ji Yufei triggered the inner demon tribulation, in the depths of the chaos divine sea, another person undergoing the heavenly tribulation was also facing the most terrifying change of the sage tribulation. An almost transparent divine fire descended from the heavens. This was the legendary tribulation fire. The appearance of the tribulation fire definitely wasn't a legend, but something that really happened. When the tribulation fire descended, the seawater within a radius of dozens of miles was directly evaporated. In some places, even the seabed emerged. Roar! Someone roared in the sea of fire. It was the person undergoing the heavenly tribulation. The tribulation fire burned on his body, and he was in extreme pain. That person stood in the sea of fire, his body trembling. Only by surviving this could he ascend to the extreme and become an invincible sage. In the depths of the chaos divine sea, many powerful existences found the place where this person was undergoing the heavenly tribulation. They were all watching, and no one dared to approach casually, afraid that they would be contaminated by the power of the tribulation fire. At this time, the two people undergoing the heavenly tribulation were at the juncture of life and death. The power of the tribulation fire was definitely not inferior to Ji Yufei's inner demon tribulation. Ji Yufei had experienced too many things along the way. All sorts of illusions could not truly make him lose his mind, because his Tao heart was extremely firm. Soon, Ji Yufei broke through the inner demon tribulation and used the essence soul Tao sword to destroy the demonic nature in his heart. Rumble! Just as Ji Yufei broke through the inner demon tribulation, thunder sounded in the sky again. This time, 3 figures walked out from the depths of the sky. What? Ji Yufei almost jumped up from the ground when he saw the 3 figures. He was so shocked that he couldn't be any more shocked. These 3 figures were completely formed by lightning. Among these 3 figures, one was a bald monk, and the other 2 seemed to be supreme existences that had appeared in ancient times. Do you still want me to live? Ji Yufei was also dumbfounded. He felt the aura of a supreme being. These were the imprints left behind by the 3 supreme beings in the heavenly Tao before they became sages. Boom! The bald monk blasted a palm at Ji Yufei. The golden palm slammed down from the sky like a huge mountain. Everyone who saw this scene was extremely shocked. Buzz! Ji Yufei shook the 9 heaven stars sword in his hand and raised his hand to slash out an incomparably resplendent chaos sword flash. The chilling sword chi spread out, causing the surrounding temperature to drop. The chaos sword flash collided with the golden Buddha palm that slammed down from the sky. A powerful force came crashing down, causing the ground to sink. The huge golden hand destroyed the primal chaos sword light that Ji Yufei had slashed out with ease, and then slapped Ji Yufei into the ground with a single slap. Chapter 2208. The heavenly tribulation of a saint was too powerful, and the power of the heavenly Tao seemed endless. Those supreme existences who were once invincible under the starry sky had actually appeared. Although it was not their true bodies, it was enough to shake the world. The power of the heavenly Tao turned into 3 figures condensed from lightning. These were the imprints left behind by the supreme existences when they attacked the heavenly Tao before they achieved the Tao. As long as someone succeeded in challenging the heavenly Tao would be branded with that person's imprint, especially the imprint of those supreme existences. Anyone who wanted to become a saint had to fight against the heavenly Tao and break the shackles of this world. Only by experiencing the baptism of the heavenly Tao could one become a supreme saint. Boom! The golden Buddha's hand descended from the sky and pressed Ji Yufei directly into the depths of the earth. The valley he was in was also directly destroyed by the vast and boundless Buddhist power, turning into dust. The earth shook, and a huge palm print appeared on the ground. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked to the extreme. What kind of existence was that? How could it possess such divine might? Even some of the ancient sages felt their hearts palpitating. The heavenly tribulation of the desolate era did not seem so abnormal. The bald monk formed from lightning had boundless Buddhist power on his body, and ancient Buddhist patterns were faintly discernible, as if a Buddhist saint had descended. What's going on? Even the experienced and knowledgeable ancient saints were dumbfounded. Could this be the imprint left behind by the legendary Lord Buddha? Otherwise, how could it be so strong? However, the other two figures did not make a move. Roar! A furious roar came from the depths of the earth. Ji Yufei did not die, but rushed out from the depths, his blood and qi still vigorous to the extreme. Where did this fierce person come from? Many people came from other ancestral lands and did not know Ji Yufei, but some came from the soaring dragon ancestral star, and some were even Ji Yufei's former opponents. It's him. In the distant sky, the shadow of a white tiger could be vaguely seen. A young man who looked like a ferocious tiger stood in the void. When he saw Ji Yufei, he was shocked to the extreme. I didn't expect it to be him. In another direction, a vermilion bird was floating amidst the primordial mist. It wasn't a real vermilion bird, but a young woman in a crimson battle dress. As expected of Big Ji Yu. Only Big Ji Yu would have such courage. Hei Tian saw this scene from afar and was extremely excited. Ji Yufei could already break through to the saint level. This was not a problem for Ji Yufei, because he was very clear about Ji Yufei's strength. Boom! An intense battle broke out. Terrifying energy ripples spread for 100,000 miles. Even in the chaotic divine soil, a scene that seemed to be able to destroy heaven and earth appeared. The incomparably stable void was directly pierced through, the thick earth was sinking, and the spectators in the distance had no choice but to retreat further away. If one were to be affected by this kind of energy, there would only be one outcome, and that was the destruction of both body and soul. No one wanted to die, especially the old-timers who had been waiting for this moment for tens of thousands of years. The opportunity to become a saint had already appeared, but some people were already attacking the Tao of Heaven. So long as someone succeeded, the 10,000 years of waiting would be for naught. By this time, Ji Yufei was in a frenzy, his eyes bloodshot, and his invincible battle intent surged. Splurt! There was a flash of blood as a divine sword pierced through his shoulder. It wasn't a real divine sword, but it was even more terrifying than a real divine sword. The attacker was a long-haired Daoist, who looked like a Tao father descending from the heavens. With just one sword strike, he injured Ji Yufei. Bang! The moment Ji Yufei was struck by the sword, his body trembled and he was sent flying. Another middle-aged man made his move. This middle-aged man was actually using a martial path battle skill. Buddhist, immortal, martial. I, Ji Yufei, really have a lot of face. I actually attracted a heavenly tribulation like this. Ji Yufei coughed up a mouthful of blood. His life force was rapidly being extinguished as the power of the Tao of Heaven invaded his body and destroyed it. Ji Yufei sneered and used the winged emergence art. The power of the Tao that had invaded his body was instantly dispelled, and his injuries healed rapidly. In the blink of an eye, he was back to normal. What a powerful fleshly body! Someone exclaimed. If an ordinary person had suffered such an attack, they would have long since been destroyed in body and soul. Only Ji Yufei could withstand it. Could it be one of those legendary divine arts? Some of the ancient saints seemed to have realized something, and their eyes lit up. There were quite a few ancient saints who had entered the primal chaos divine soil. The flood dragon's slaughter of the human geniuses had forced the ancient saints of the various superpowers to enter. After all, the geniuses of the human race were the future of the human race. If they were all killed by the flood dragon, it would be a disaster. The flood dragon had gone too far and incurred the wrath of the masses. At this time, in order to preserve his life, Jiyu Fei used all kinds of methods. His fists smashed the void as he fought the bald monk. His martial body was constantly injured by the power of the Tao of Heaven, but it quickly recovered. It was like a blacksmith hammering a piece of red-hot iron. After constant hammering, the iron would gradually become purer and harder. Right now, Jiyu Fei was like a piece of iron, and the Tao of Heaven was the blacksmith. Under the tempering of the Tao of Heaven, the 9 Tao patterns that Jiyu Fei had comprehended gradually took shape and imprinted themselves on every part of his body. The Tao of Heaven and Earth gradually fused together. The reason why the saints could stand high above and look down on all living beings was because the saints' body and Tao had fused together, surpassing the Tao of Heaven and Earth. Before becoming a saint, all living beings were weak ants under the Tao of Heaven and Earth. Jiyu Fei's martial body was getting stronger and stronger, and he began to have the power to counterattack. Gradually, he could contend against the 3 figures formed from lightning. Buzz. Soon, the 9 Tao patterns that emerged from Jiyu Fei's body began to become clear. The void trembled, and the 9 Tao patterns attracted the surrounding spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Even the primal chaos qi was drawn over and was devoured by Jiyu Fei's martial body. Jiyu Fei's martial body was like a starving beast, greedily devouring the surrounding spiritual qi. Bang! Jiyu Fei struck out with the primal chaos fist. 9 Tao patterns emerged on his fist, drawing the strongest power and forcing the bald monk back. Then, Jiyu Fei used the 8 desolation steps and instantly appeared above the immortal Tao figure. With a stomp, the immortal Tao figure was trampled down from the sky. After forcing back the 2 Tao of Heaven's incarnations, Jiyu Fei directly pounced on the other figure and engaged in close combat with it. In just an instant, Jiyu Fei had thrown out more than 1,000 punches. Too fierce. Everyone who saw this scene was dumbfounded. Boss is about to succeed in suppressing the Tao of Heaven. Chapter 2209. How is this possible? Is he really going to defy the heavens? Seeing that Jiyu Fei was actually able to contend against the incarnation of the heavenly will, everyone was dumbfounded. Becoming a saint through force. Who knew how long it had been since a saint like this had appeared? However, although the situation was very advantageous to Jiyu Fei, there were people who were unwilling to see Jiyu Fei become a saint. Boom! Just as Jiyu Fei was suppressing the incarnation of the heavenly will, a powerful aura of a saint suddenly appeared in the sky 1,000 miles away. The pressure of a saint spread out in all directions. Those guys, the thing that He Tian had been worried about all this time had finally happened. Jiyu Fei definitely had many enemies on the soaring dragon ancestral star. The thing that these people wanted to see the most was Jiyu Fei becoming a saint. Once Jiyu Fei became a saint, they would have no way to survive. With Jiyu Fei's personality, once he returned to the soaring dragon ancestral star after becoming a saint, he would definitely settle the grudges of the past. At that time, many people would die. The saint who was 1,000 miles away made his move. A divine stone that was emitting an overwhelming chaotic divine light flew up and smashed towards the head of Jiyu Fei, who was fighting endlessly against the incarnation of the heavenly will. That stone was not simple. It was a saint striking stone that could hit a saint. Despicable and shameless guy. He Tian was both shocked and furious. He watched this scene nervously. The saint striking stone smashed directly into the heavenly tribulation. Just as it was about to land on Jiyu Fei's head, the middle-aged man who was fighting with Jiyu Fei suddenly turned around and punched out. Boom! The middle-aged man's punch directly smashed onto the saint striking stone, and it was actually blasted away. Whoa! The saint who had attacked Jiyu Fei 1,000 miles away coughed out a mouthful of blood. The saint striking stone was covered in cracks, and its light was dim. It was almost shattered by that middle-aged man's punch. That saint did not dare to stay any longer. He immediately put away the saint striking stone and quickly retreated. This, when Jiyu Fei saw the incarnation of heavens will actually unleash such a powerful punch, almost shattering the saint striking stone that the saint had taken out, he was truly shocked. If that punch had been aimed at him, he would have been smashed into pieces. However, when the heavenly Tao incarnation turned around and attacked Ji Yufei again, Ji Yufei realized that the power displayed by the heavenly Tao incarnation was far inferior to the previous punch. Could it be that the power of the heavenly Tao's incarnation varies from person to person? Ji Yufei quickly came to a realization. No one dared to make another move. The backlash from the heavenly tribulation was no joke. Even those who did not want to see Ji Yufei become a saint could not do anything at this time. Ji Yufei's tribulation was already irreversible. At this time, Ji Yufei had no distractions in his heart. He could feel that his strength was constantly increasing, and the great Tao he had comprehended was constantly fusing into his life. Only when the body and the great Tao became one could true eternity be realized. Of course, this was relative. There were no absolutes in the world. Even supreme beings who were known to be invincible in the 3 realms and 6 paths would fall, let alone saints. In the end, even Ji Yufei's martial body was shattered a few times. Only then did Ji Yufei's martial body finally complete the transformation and become a saint's body. Under the attacks of the 3 incarnations of heaven's will, Ji Yufei almost died. However, he endured it and then counterattacked. In the end, the 9 Tao patterns were formed and successfully fused into Ji Yufei's life. Although the 3 incarnations of heaven's will were powerful, they were still shattered by Ji Yufei in the end and returned to the heavenly Tao. Roar! Ji Yufei roared at the sky. A terrifying sound wave spread far and wide. The 9 heaven stars sword in his hand also vibrated, and a wave of life was born in the divine sword. Everyone's expression changed. An unimaginably powerful saint had appeared in the world. The heavenly Tao shook. At this moment, everyone who entered the chaotic divine soil was dumbfounded. How is this possible? The divine punishment faded and the terrifying power returned to the heavenly Tao. Rumble, at the moment when Ji Yufei became a saint, the divine sound of the great path also sounded in the depths of the chaotic divine sea. The power of the saint level spread in all directions. The 2 of them became saints at almost the same time. This was unbelievable. Wasn't there supposed to be only 1 saint in a generation? Why did 2 saints appear today? How is this possible? This doesn't make sense. Someone said something like that. Haha, Ji Yufei, it's time for you to die. Crazy laughter came from the depths of the chaotic divine sea. If you dare to kill people from the extraterrestrial divine mountain, you should be prepared to die. From the depths of the chaotic divine sea, a red-haired young man walked out. 9 primordial Tao patterns appeared on his body, intertwining with the power of the saint level. Roar! Just when the red-haired young man was about to leave the chaotic divine sea, a roar was heard. A fierce beast the size of a small mountain rushed out of the sea and opened its mouth to bite the red-haired young man. You don't know what's good for you. The red-haired young man waved his hand. The fierce beast flew up and smashed over a dozen miles away. Bang! With a bang, the ferocious beast's body exploded, turning into a bloody mist that dissipated into the void. Human, how dare you kill my subordinate? A wave of divine consciousness came. Then, a middle-aged man wearing golden armor and holding a trident walked out from the depths of the chaotic divine sea. I killed him. Why do you have so much nonsense to say? The red-haired young man said disdainfully. Die. The middle-aged man with the trident rushed over. He waved the trident in his hand and huge waves were immediately set off in the chaotic divine sea. Without any unnecessary words, the red-haired young man and the middle-aged man started fighting. This was a battle between saints. A terrifying wave of power spread out and the chaotic divine sea was in chaos. Many remnants of chaos that were hiding in the chaotic divine sea fled. Although the red-haired young man had just passed the divine tribulation, he was extremely powerful and his combat power was shocking. The pressure of a saint was suffocating. The overlord of the sea in human form was unable to gain the upper hand. Just as the red-haired young man from the extraterrestrial divine mountain was fighting with the overlord of the sea, 2 figures blocked Ji Yufei's way. Die! Without any words, the 2 saints attacked Ji Yufei. Scram! Just as Ji Yufei was about to fight, a loud shout was heard from afar. Then, The two saints who attacked Jiu Fei really started rolling in the void until they disappeared from Jiu Fei's sight. Jiu Fei was extremely shocked. He never expected that there would be such a powerful person. To this person, saints were probably as weak as ants. He hurriedly looked in the direction of the voice, only to see a middle-aged man dressed in beast skin and holding a stone staff walking towards him from afar. Human Sovereign. Chapter 22:10. No one would have thought that a Ren Huang would appear in the chaotic divine soil. This was an invincible existence apart from the Supremes. Even immortal venerables might not be a match for a Ren Huang. To a certain extent, a Ren Huang was a supremacy. Jiu Fei had just become a saint, so many people wanted to attack him. However, the Ren Huang let out a loud roar and sent two saints flying far away. Those who wanted to attack Jiu Fei had no choice but to retreat. With the presence of the human sovereign, even a supreme being would have to think twice before attacking Jiu Fei. Greetings, Ren Huang. Jiu Fei hurriedly bowed to Jiang Ren Huang. He was an elder of the Jiang family of the clan of the remote antiquity. He attained his Tao in the ancient times and was the last human sovereign to do so. After Ren Huang Jiang, no one else could cultivate to the Ren Huang fruit of the way. No need to be so polite. Actually, I have to thank you. If it wasn't for that drop of immortal godly liquid, the poison in my body would not have been dissolved so quickly. Ren Huang Jiang came in front of Jiu Fei and patted his shoulder. It is my honor to be able to help Ren Huang. Jiu Fei said respectfully. There had been human emperors among the human race, and all of them were worthy of respect. This human emperor Jiang had even pacified a great turmoil in the late untainted land of antiquity. The chaos of the ancient Huanmo was definitely a catastrophe for the human clan. It was unknown how many experts of the human clan were killed by this demon and their essence was devoured. If it wasn't for Ren Huang Jiang, perhaps the Huanmo could have broken through the shackles and become a demon ancestor. Who is that? Ren Huang. In the sky, an ancient saint whispered. He looks familiar, he seems to be. Someone seemed to have recognized Ren Huang Jiang. Ren Huang Jiang's appearance was a bit special. He wore animal skin and held a stone stick in his hand. He looked like an uncivilized human who had just walked out of the primitive mountains. It can't be him. An ancient saint who had lived in the same era as Ren Huang Jiang was shocked to the extreme after seeing him. It was as if he had seen the most unbelievable thing in the world. The invincible Ren Huang was not just a legend. To live in the same era as a Ren Huang was definitely a tragedy for these ancient saints. Roar! Just as Jiang Ren Huang and Jiu Fei were talking, in a valley thousands of miles away, waves of demonic howls were heard, and a demonic shadow was looming in the valley. Jiang Xian, if I, Huanmo, don't take revenge for this, I swear not to be a demon. Vicious words came from the valley. Yes. Just as the demon in the valley was cursing Jiang Renhuang seemed to have sensed something. His eyes emitted a bright light as he suddenly turned around and looked in the direction of the valley where the phantom demon was. What's wrong? Jiu Fei couldn't help but be surprised when he saw Jiang Renhuang's desire to fight. Chimph, it's fine. That demon is here too. He really doesn't know his place. Jiang Renhuang didn't say much. He took a step forward, and a path formed by intertwining runes appeared beneath his feet, stretching into the distance. Before Jiu Fei could regain his composure, Jiang Renhuang was already far away. The birth of the human sovereign was definitely an earth-shattering event. Very quickly, this news spread and shocked all the forces that entered the chaotic divine soil. The people from the Jiang clan of the primordial clan were especially excited. Jiang Renhuang's disappearance had a great impact on the Jiang family of the clan of the ancients. Some people said that Jiang Renhuang had fallen in the battle with the Huanmo. However, the Jiang family of the clan of the ancients did not believe that the human sovereign could not even deal with a Huanmo, and no one had seen the human sovereign's corpse. However, the human sovereign hadn't returned to the Jiang family for tens of thousands of years. This made the Jiang family's enemies of the clan of the ancients restless. One of the sworn enemies of the Jiang family from the primordial antiquity even attacked the Jiang family first. In the end, That enemy joined forces with all of the Jiang family's death grounds and attacked the Jiang family's ancestral court. If it weren't for Jiang Runhuang's backup plan, the Jiang family of the clan of the ancients would have been destroyed a long time ago. With the patriarch's return, our Jiang clan can finally challenge the world again. An elder of the Jiang family of the desolate shouted. Let's see who still dares to bully our Jiang family. The people of the Jiang family felt a sense of relief. For countless years, they had endured for far too long. Today, with the return of the patriarch, they could finally vent the anger in their chests. However, there were also many who were unwilling to see the return of Jiang Renhuang, especially those superpowers that had a deep grudge against the Jiang family of the desolate antiquity. Many ancient saints left the chaotic divine soil as soon as they heard the news of Jiang Runhuang's return. These people wanted to enter the chaotic divine soil to kill the geniuses of the Jiang family of the desolate antiquity. However, at this time, they only wanted to protect themselves. If they encountered the human sovereign, no matter how many of them there were, they would still die. Even immortal venerable ancestors would have to retreat. This was the human sovereign, the sovereign of men. What, at this time, the Huanmo who was hiding in the valley to heal his injuries had already sensed Jiang Runhuang's rapid approach. He immediately split himself into countless clones and rushed in all directions. One had to admit that the Huanmo's illusion technique was indeed impressive. Even someone as powerful as Jiang Renhuang couldn't find the true body of this peerless devil. Kill. Jiang Renhuang instantly appeared above the valley and swung the stone cudgel in his hand down. Rumble. The entire heaven and earth shook. Even the chaotic divine soil that was as stable as the chaotic divine soil was shaken. The aura of the human sovereign spread across the entire chaotic divine soil, shocking all living beings. How many years has it been since such a supreme existence has appeared again? An old voice came from the depths of the chaotic divine soil. At this time, the stone cudgel fell. The billions of clones that the Huanmo had created were all dispersed by the mighty aura of the human sovereign. However, the true body of the Huanmo had disappeared. What a cunning devil! Jiang Renhuang kept the stone cudgel and glanced at the depths of the chaotic divine soil. Then, he disappeared into the void. He had sensed the aura of the Huanmo and chased after it. It's really. How is this possible? Although the aura of the human sovereign only appeared for a brief moment, it was enough to shake the world. All the ancient saints no longer doubted that the human sovereign of the Jiang family was still alive. The 3 realms and the 6 paths will be in chaos soon. The Skynet that those old guys set up is about to collapse. You have to improve your cultivation as soon as possible to deal with the coming chaos. At this time, Jiang Runhuang's voice resounded in Ji Yufei's mind. Ji Yufei was shocked to the extreme because what Jiang Renhuang said was too terrifying. The 3 realms and the 6 paths would be in chaos and the Skynet would be a great secret. Could it be that with his current cultivation, he still couldn't deal with the chaos? The more Ji Yufei thought about it, the more frightened he became. Ji Yufei, it really is you. Chapter 22:11. The murderous aura was so shocking that the primal chaos mist within a radius of 10,000 miles was dispersed by this murderous aura. A crimson-haired young man with purple lightning flashing all over his body walked in the void, approaching Ji Yufei step by step. Who are you? Ji Yufei's blood boiled when he saw this person. This was a powerful opponent, and it seemed that he had just become a martial sage. Could it be that this person was competing with him for the opportunity to become a martial sage? Chen Ph, my good-for-nothing brother. Although he is a good-for-nothing, it is not up to an outsider to kill him. The crimson-haired young man came in front of Ji Yufei, stared at Ji Yufei, and said coldly, Ph, I have killed a lot of trash. You are talking about that trash. Ji Yufei was full of fighting spirit. At this time, he wanted to find a guy to practice with, but he did not expect this guy to jump out so quickly. You are courting death. The people of extraterrestrial Divine Mountain are not so easily bullied. The crimson-haired young man gritted his teeth and said, Ah, I remember now. So you are the brother of Long Badao. If your brother is trash, then as his brother, you should be trash too. Ji Yufei said with a smile. The crimson-haired young man heard this, and blue veins popped on his forehead. He stretched out his right hand and grabbed the air in front of him. A purple divine light suddenly appeared in his hand, and then a purple spear appeared in his hand. Whoosh! Without any words, the crimson-haired young man held the spear and stabbed at Ji Fei. The spear was surrounded by purple qi, and there were 9 purple Dao patterns on it. It attracted the surrounding spiritual qi of heaven and earth. When the spear stabbed out, a hole was pierced in the void. Ji Fei did not use the 9 heaven stars sword. He directly waved his fist and punched at the spear. Ha ha, you want to fight against a sacred weapon with your flesh and blood? Do you think you are a martial ancestor? The crimson-haired young man's words were extremely cold and emotionless. However, his smile soon disappeared because Ji Fei had already punched the tip of the spear. When the fist and the spear collided, the sound of metal colliding was heard. The crimson-haired young man felt as if his spear had struck an immortal divine metal. The impact numbed his hands, and the spear almost flew out of his hands. What? The blood-red-haired young man's shock was no small matter. His opponent's body seemed to be terrifyingly tough, able to fight against a true perfect saint weapon. The purple spear was not a sacred weapon refined by the red-haired young man himself. It was a treasure from the extraterrestrial divine mountain. This time, he brought it with him. He was very clear about the might of the purple gold battle spear, especially since he had become a saint. This seemingly ordinary attack would probably be able to shatter even an ancient sacred mountain. Kill. While the crimson-haired young man was still in shock, Ji Fei had already used his form displacement transposition to close in on the crimson-haired young man in an instant. He then swung his hand at the young man's head. Buzz. The void shook, and a chaotic blade radiance rushed out from Ji Fei's right hand. It was like a real peerless blade, cutting through the void. Swoosh. Just when Ji Fei's hand was about to hit the crimson-haired young man, the latter's body suddenly blurred, as if he was about to disappear. Ji Fei's hand chopped, but there was no point of force at all. It was as if he was chopping at the air. This was an afterimage left by the crimson-haired young man, which had not yet disappeared. The real body of the crimson-haired young man had already moved hundreds of feet away. What a fast body movement! Ji Fei was shocked. His opponent had also mastered an extremely fast body movement. The extraterrestrial divine mountain was indeed not to be underestimated. Long Badao was already extraordinary in the past. Since this person was Long Badao's elder brother, he must be an extraordinary existence. Long Badao wanted to plot against Ji Fei, but he was killed by Ji Fei. This was definitely a great loss for the extraterrestrial divine mountain, because Long Badao was one of the few geniuses cultivated by the extraterrestrial divine mountain. The status of the extraterrestrial divine mountain was transcendent. Someone dared to kill their disciple, which naturally made the ruler of the extraterrestrial divine mountain furious. Others might be afraid of the extraterrestrial divine mountain, but Ji Fei was definitely an exception. He did not care where Long Badao came from. Since he was an enemy, he would directly kill him. Swoosh. Ji Fei's body also disappeared in the void. He displayed his extremely fast body movement and attacked the crimson-haired young man. Seeing this scene, the pupils of the crimson-haired young man could not help but shrink. The next moment, he also disappeared in the void. Boom. Bang. The two great saints began to fight. Every time they collided, it was bound to shake the heaven and earth, causing the void to tremble. Their body movements were so fast that it was impossible to see them with the naked eye. Such speed made everyone's heart palpitate. The battle between the saints was not small, and many nearby cultivators who had not yet dispersed were attracted again. Bastards from the extraterrestrial divine mountain, He Tian was extremely nervous in the distance. Ji Fei had just become a saint, but he had already encountered a strong opponent. This was both a good and a bad thing for Ji Fei. The good thing was that Ji Fei could practice and master this new power in the battle. The bad thing was that Ji Fei had not adapted to this new power yet. He Tian had already seen that the purple golden spear in his opponent's hand was not ordinary. With the improvement of his cultivation, He Tian gradually awakened more and more soul memories. The extraterrestrial divine mountain was not a force to be trifled with. It was a super force that was not weaker than the remote antiquity forces. Moreover, in Haitian's soul memories, it seemed that the extraterrestrial divine mountain seemed to have an extremely deep foundation. Boss, you must win. Haitian mumbled to himself. Jiu Fei has met his match. In the distant sky, in the chaotic mist, a divine bird was faintly discernible. A woman in a crimson battle robe was watching this scene. Why are there two saints? This doesn't make sense. Someone said something like that. Jiu Fei and the crimson-haired young man had become saints at the same time. This was something that was rarely seen. Even the ancient saints could not understand why this was happening. Could it be that the others still had a chance to become saints? Someone was guessing, but no one dared to try. After all, once a saint's tribulation was triggered, there would be no turning back. If they failed, they would be destroyed in both body and soul. No one dared to challenge this iron rule, because if they guessed wrong, they would be courting death. Bang! There was a thunder-like collision in the void. The figures of Jiu Fei and the crimson-haired young man appeared in the void. Jiu Fei punched the crimson-haired young man's shoulder, sending him flying. The crimson-haired young man also waved the purple-golden spear in his hand. The spear swept fiercely at Jiu Fei's waist, sending Jiu Fei flying. Chapter 22:12. Kill. The two cultivators who had just become saints were fighting. Terrifying shockwaves spread in all directions. There were flashes of light in the sky from time to time, tearing the sky apart and destroying everything. The primal chaos mist within a radius of 100,000 miles was completely dispersed. Everyone was incomparably shocked. These two people were too powerful, and did not look like they had just become saints. Even some of the ancient saints were shocked to see this scene. Bang! Jiu Fei punched the crimson-haired young man's shoulder again. This time, the powerful power of the saint path erupted from Jiu Fei's right fist. The young man's left shoulder was smashed into pieces and turned into a mist of blood. On the chaotic fist, the 9 primordial patterns were faintly visible. Jiu Fei's entire body was like a human-shaped saint weapon. The strength of his saint body was shocking. But at the moment when Jiu Fei's fist landed on the young man's shoulder, blood suddenly appeared on his right thigh. It was pierced by a purple-gold battle spear. The crimson-haired young man held the purple-gold battle spear in his right hand and wanted to lift Jiu Fei up. However, Jiu Fei stretched out his left hand and grabbed the purple-gold battle spear in his thigh. Then, he used his right hand to chop down on the spear. Roar! Jiu Fei roared. His roar was like a clap of thunder, causing the ears of all the spectators to buzz and their blood to boil. Bang! The sound of metal breaking was heard. Under the crimson-haired young man's disbelieving gaze, the purple-gold battle spear was actually broken into 2 by Jiu Fei's right hand. What? The crimson-haired young man was truly shocked. The strength of his opponent's body was beyond his imagination. This kind of body was too terrifying. No wonder Long Badao died at the hands of this person. It was not that Long Badao was not strong, but that this person was stronger than him. The purple-golden battle spear was not an ordinary saint weapon. It was a treasure left behind by an ancestor of the extraterrestrial divine mountain. Moreover, this purple-gold battle spear was refined from purple-gold divine essence, so its toughness far surpassed that of godly metal. How much strength would it take to break the purple-gold battle spear with one's bare hand? There was no time for the crimson-haired young man to think any further. Jiu Fei had already pulled out the spear that was stuck in his thigh and thrust it at him. Let's do it. The crimson-haired young man gritted his teeth and a surge of ruthlessness surged in his heart. He raised his hand and the broken spear in his hand stabbed towards Jiu Fei's chest. Pu! Pu! 2 soft sounds rang out. The battle spear in Jiu Fei's hand stabbed ruthlessly into the scarlet-haired young man's left chest. The tip of the spear came out of the young man's back. The blood-haired youth's broken spear was also stabbed into Jiu Fei's chest. Divine blood rained down from the sky. The drops of blood were like blood-colored divine jade. Every drop of blood contained a huge amount of essence qi, and there were faint traces of the Tao within them. How dare you fight me in close combat? You're courting death. Ji Fei stretched out his left hand and grabbed the crimson-haired young man's right arm. He then pulled forcefully. There was a flash of blood. The crimson-haired young man roared angrily. His entire arm, from the shoulder down, was torn off by Ji Fei. Are you the successor of the martial ancestor? The crimson-haired young man was extremely shocked. Waves of the divine sound of the great path came from his body. The wounds on his body were healing rapidly, and his broken arm was growing back. At this level of cultivation, the heavy injuries on the body could no longer seriously damage the crimson-haired young man's vitality. If Yi Futian wanted to kill him, he would have to use special methods. The crimson-haired young man quickly retreated, trying to distance himself from Ji Fei. However, Ji Fei followed him like a shadow. He threw a punch at the crimson-haired young man's chest. Bang! Crack! The sound of flesh colliding and bones breaking could be heard. The crimson-haired young man's chest caved in from Ji Fei's punch. It was as if he had been hit by a giant hammer. The crimson-haired young man was sent flying by Ji Fei's punch. The half-spear that was stuck in his chest flew out, and blood splattered everywhere. Roar! The crimson-haired young man roared. His crimson-haired hair danced wildly. Divine light shone from his body, and the divine sound of the great path rang out from his body. 9 primordial patterns rushed out from the crimson-haired young man's body and enveloped him. Die! Ji Fei was extremely powerful. He was gradually gaining control of the new power. The power of the 9 primordial patterns had gradually merged with his martial body. He used the desolate steps and broke through the space that was sealed by the 9 primordial patterns outside the crimson-haired young man's body. He pointed at the crimson-haired young man's forehead. The crimson-haired young man seemed to want to say something, but the next moment, the divine light in his eyes gradually dimmed. He had lost his luster and vitality. Ji Fei broke the crimson-haired young man's Niwen palace with one finger and destroyed his primordial spirit. The power of the 9 primordial patterns started from the young man's forehead and instantly spread to his entire body, cutting off all of the crimson-haired young man's vitality. This method could kill a saint. The crimson-haired young man was dead. Without his spiritual soul, his corpse fell from the sky. An extremely powerful saint had fallen just like that. In the distance, everyone who was watching the battle was shocked to see this scene. This young saint was not simple. He was much stronger than the other saints who had just become saints. It was hard to imagine that someone who had just become a saint had fallen just like that. Roar! Someone shouted in the distant sky. The experts from extraterrestrial Divine Mountain were all extremely excited. They wanted nothing more than to tear Ji Fei into pieces and eat Ji Fei's flesh. Old He, I'll leave this corpse to you. Ji Fei said to He Tian, who was thousands of miles away. He took a step forward and instantly crossed thousands of miles of the void, stopping the 2 old men who were about to retreat. Damn it! The 2 old men's expressions changed drastically. What's so great about extraterrestrial Divine Mountain? There are actually 2 ancient half-saints who have also entered the chaotic divine soil. Ji Fei's face was expressionless, and his voice was extremely calm. Do you think you can still live after killing a saint of our clan? One of the 2 old men, a bald old man, said while gritting his teeth. Don't kill me. I'm willing to serve you as my master. The other old man in black seemed to be scared out of his wits. His body was trembling, and his voice was trembling. The bald old man could not help but stare angrily at the old man in black when he saw his companion say such words. You what? Even ants want to live, let alone humans. I don't want to die. The old man in black said loudly. Traitor, I'm going to kill you. The bald old man's murderous intent soared. He opened his mouth and spat out a divine sword, which slashed towards the old man in black. The sword chi was vast and mighty, and the surrounding temperature dropped rapidly. Kill him and you can live. Ji Fei said. Roar. Chapter 22:13. Without saying anything else, the black-robed old man charged towards the bald old man. His killing intent was shocking, as if he wanted to tear the bald old man apart. Are you crazy? Are you really going to betray us? The bald old man was both shocked and furious. He and the black-robed old man were fellow disciples of the same sect and had a good connection with each other. But now, the bald old man wanted to kill him in order to live. "I want to live." The black-robed old man roared and attacked. The string of bone beads on his wrist flew up and turned into 9 balls of divine light that smashed towards the bald old man. No one wanted to die. The black-robed old man seemed to really want to live. Kill. The bald old man's divine sword vibrated and a chilling sword chi spread out, causing the surrounding temperature to drop rapidly. The divine sword emitted a terrifying fluctuation as it slashed towards the black-robed old man. Clang. The 9 balls of divine light clashed with the bald old man's sword light, emitting an ear-piercing sound. Buzz. The power of destruction spread out, causing the entire space to ripple like transparent water. Ancient half-saints were much stronger than ordinary half-saints. Especially those half-saints who had started cultivating during the primordial era and had lived until now. Although these ancient half-saints couldn't break through their shackles and become sages after waiting for so long, their understanding and comprehension of the Grand Tao wasn't something that ordinary people could compare to. The bald old man and the black-robed old man were definitely experts amongst ancient half-saints. Even the eyelashes of these antiques were empty. They were extremely shrewd. "Let's go." Just as the two of them seemed to be fighting with their lives on the line, the black-robed old man and the bald old man each took out a diagram and the two similar forces collided. Boom! The heavens and earth shook as the two diagrams radiated with boundless divine light. A spatial tunnel appeared in the sky. Without any hesitation, the two of them put away their divine weapons and rushed into the spatial tunnel, disappearing inside. Trying to escape. Ji Fei had been watching this scene coldly. When he saw that the two ancient half-saints wanted to escape, he took a step forward and charged into the spatial passageway before it completely disappeared. Rumble. The heaven and earth shook. Ji Fei barged into a small world. The powerful pressure of a saint spread out, almost causing the small world to collapse. What? The bald old man and the black-clothed old man were dumbfounded. They realized that they had underestimated Ji Fei. He had just become a saint, but he already had such methods. This small world was a special place. Although it was not big, it was like a fairyland. Many of the most outstanding geniuses of the extraterrestrial divine mountain were cultivating here. At this time, Ji Fei fixed the spatial passage in place. "Kill. Let's attack together. No matter the price, kill him for me," the bald old man roared. Buzz. A sword chime rang out as the bald old man's divine sword transformed into a beam of divine light that shot towards Ji Fei. Bang. Ji Fei casually threw a punch and shattered the divine sword into thousands of pieces. Countless pieces flew back towards the bald old man. At this time, everyone in the small world knew that a strong enemy had come. Moreover, this person was a saint. This was definitely a disaster for everyone in the small world. From time to time, there was a burst of powerful waves. All the people who were cultivating in the small world walked out and attacked Ji Fei. A little and dares to challenge a dragon. You really don't know what's good for you. Ji Fei sneered and waved his hand. All the divine weapons that were flying towards him were sent flying away. Some of the divine weapons had already shattered into thousands of pieces in the air. Some of the divine weapons were extraordinary and did not shatter on the spot. However, they were covered in cracks as if they could shatter at any time. This was a battle without any suspense. Ji Fei attacked one after another and killed the two ancient half-saints on the spot. Then, he killed all the disciples of the extraterrestrial divine mountain in the small world. Since he had completely offended this superforce, Ji Fei would not hold back. Then, Ji Fei took away the small world. He planned to integrate the small world into his inner world. After coming out of the spatial tunnel, Ji Fei saw He Tian coming to greet him. At this time, He Tian had already taken care of the sacred corpse. He Tian had taken everything from the unlucky red-haired young man. Even the corpse was not spared by He Tian. This was the sacred body of a saint-level cultivator. Even if he was dead, the power contained in his body would not dissipate. Every part of a sacred body was a treasure, especially its blood. That was the source of power. It was a great medicine that was comparable to divine medicine. It could increase a cultivator's cultivation. Boss. He Tian could not help but be excited to see Ji Yu Fei again. Not bad. You have also touched that level. Ji Yu Fei could see He Tian's current cultivation state at a glance. He Tian actually had the ability to break through to the saint level. Boss, we have been living in fear on the soaring dragon ancestral star without you. He Tian knew that many people on the soaring dragon ancestral star were going to be unlucky. Once Ji Yu Fei returned to the soaring dragon ancestral star, he would definitely deal with these despicable guys. Are you exaggerating? You won't let yourself suffer a loss, Yi Zichen said with a smile. Ji Yu Fei said with a smile. He knew He Tian very well. This guy was a perfect match for old Tortoise in the Heaven Realm. They were both the ancestors of the underhanded method. Boss, where is Ji Yu Zhong? He Tian asked. I have to bring them back. When Ji Yu Fei entered the Chaos Well, he left Ji Yu Zhong and the others at the third trial. He did not know how they were doing now. He did not hesitate and immediately returned to the Chaos Passageway. I did not expect you guys to actually step on the legendary ancient road of the human race. He Tian was shocked. He knew from Ji Yu Fei some of the things that Ji Yu Fei had experienced. He was extremely shocked. The ancient road of the human race was just a legend, but this legend was actually true. Ji Yu Fei had already become a saint. At this moment, he wanted to seal himself with the 9 primordial Tao runes. Only then did he bring He Tian into the Chaos Passageway. On the third trial of the ancient road of the human race, there were many people fighting in a valley in the great wilderness. Corpses could be seen everywhere outside the valley. At this moment, there were hundreds of people surrounding a group of people in the valley. Lu Xian Wang, what is the meaning of this? Do you really want to fight us to the death? A middle-aged man stood in the sky above the valley, staring at a divine island that floated high in the sky as he shouted. Kill, don't let a single one of them go. Chapter 22:14. A large number of experts from the South Pole Immortal Manor had already arrived at the third stage of the ancient road of humanity. Immortal Old Man's strength had increased greatly and he no longer feared anyone. Rumble, a divine island floated high in the sky. Auspicious chi and celestial light coiled around it like an ancient immortal's palace. Faint sounds of the grand Tao could be heard. This divine island was extraordinary. It used to be a palace of the South Pole Immortal Sovereign, but now it was given to Immortal Old Man Kill. A cold murderous voice came from the divine island. Immortal Old Man didn't show himself. He stayed on the divine island and controlled everything from the back. The one who showed himself was the first divine general under the South Pole Immortal Sovereign. The first divine general was an old antique who had become a saint in ancient times. Some people said that the South Pole Immortal Sovereign was a true ancient immortal sovereign. One must know that even the Middle Province Immortal Mansion that had existed for countless years had an immortal guarding it. Although the Middle Province Immortal Mansion was destroyed by the various major powers in the end and a piece of land was turned into ruins, it was enough to show how deep the foundation of the Middle Province Immortal Mansion was. If the South Pole Immortal Sovereign really was an ancient immortal sovereign, it wouldn't be strange at all. Kill. At this time, the first divine general, who was standing on a mountain outside the valley, waved his arm. The experts surrounding the valley immediately began to activate the killing formation. Rumble, the sky and earth shook. Countless formation runes appeared in the air around the valley, intertwining with each other and causing the surrounding spiritual energy to gather. Clang. The sound of divine weapons being unsheathed came from the killing formation. Then, a cold sword aura erupted and 9 beams of dazzling sword light rushed out from the killing formation. 9 swords killing formation. Seeing this scene in the sky above the valley, the Iron Blood Daoist was extremely shocked. He knew that this was one of the killing formations of the South Pole Immortal Manor. It had the power to destroy everything. It seemed that Immortal Old Man was bent on killing him. Although the Iron Blood Daoist was shocked, he didn't panic. He still had a backup plan. In the worst-case scenario, he could hide in his inner world and avoid this disaster. Humph. The Iron Blood Daoist snorted coldly. With a flip of his right hand, a fiery weapon immediately appeared in his hand. This weapon was different from the others. It was shaped like a cross and extended in 4 directions, representing the 4 extremes of the world. On the 2 sides of the 4 extremes, there was a rune left behind by a phoenix's nirvana. With the 4 extreme Tao patterns and the central Tao pattern added together, this divine weapon had 9 phoenix Tao patterns. This represented the ultimate power of the phoenix. This divine weapon was the phoenix tribulation that the Iron Blood Daoist had obtained after refining the phoenix nest. Buzz. The Iron Blood Daoist raised the phoenix tribulation in his hand, and the 8 fire Tao patterns immediately rushed out from the phoenix tribulation. They turned into 8 phantoms of phoenixes and rushed in all directions. Clang. The 9 divine swords hummed and emitted peerless sword light. Even the void was destroyed. However, the phoenix formed by the 8 patterns of the way of the phoenix blocked the 9 sword lights. What is that? The experts who charged into the valley were all shocked to the extreme. They felt a blazing aura descending from the sky. This aura made them feel hot all over. The blood in their bodies felt unbearable as if it was ignited. It's the legendary divine weapon. A voice came from the divine island in the sky. A white-haired elder with a youthful face stood in a pavilion on the divine island. The Iron Blood Daoist is not simple. He seems to have obtained the inheritance of the ancient undying Daoist. Do you need my help? Next to Earth Immortal Father stood a figure that shone with purple light like a purple sun, making it hard for people to look at him directly. There's no need for you to help. If I can't even take care of this Iron Blood Daoist, how can I control the South Pole Immortal residents in the future? The Earth Immortal Elder said disapprovingly. The person didn't say anything else after hearing that. Phoenix Tribulation? The first Divine General's pupils shrank when he saw this scene. He had achieved the Tao in the ancient era. Naturally, he had heard of the name of this divine weapon. This divine weapon was the supreme treasure of the Phoenix clan. It was obtained by the Undying Daoist. After the Undying Daoist died, this divine weapon was nowhere to be found. During that era, even the saints had the risk of dying. Some innate divine beasts were incomparably powerful and definitely not weaker than the saints. Some people said that the Undying Daoist was originally a phoenix that had achieved the Tao and turned into a human. Everyone in the valley heaved a sigh of relief after the Phoenix Tribulation stopped the 9 Swords killing formation. This South Pole Immortal residence was truly hateful. If Master was here, this old ghost Earth wouldn't have the chance to act so arrogantly. Jiyu Zhong said fiercely. His body was covered in blood. There was a shocking sword wound on his shoulder. Blood had soaked through half of his clothes. Even his bones were exposed from the wound. He had encountered a sword Tao half-saint. His opponent's cultivation and realm were far above his. If it wasn't for his incomparably powerful martial body, he would have been split in half by that sword. Some of the 12 great bandits were also heavily injured. Fortunately, the Iron Blood Daoist acted in time. Although some of them were heavily injured, none of them died. Even Yarrow Yu and Zhong Li Meng's bodies were splattered with blood. Old Jiao was also slashed by the sword Tao expert. One of his dragon claws was almost chopped off. The South Pole Immortal Residence's foundation is truly terrifying. The leader of the 12 great bandits, Zhu Gaoliang, said. Half of his Daoist robe had been torn apart, revealing the flexible armor underneath. There were 5 finger marks on the flexible armor. If he was wearing the armor, he would have been torn to pieces by the person who attacked him. That person was as ferocious as a ferocious beast. We will settle this debt with the South Pole Immortal residents sooner or later. In the end, that old ghost Earth will regret what he did today. Jiyu Zhong said in a deep voice. He was very clear about his master's personality. His master would never let these people who dared to attack him go so easily. At this moment, the entire periphery of the valley was filled with sword light. An earth-shattering destructive force was coming towards the valley. The void was being destroyed. Roar. In the sky above the valley, the Iron Blood Daoist roared. He used all his strength to control the Phoenix Tribulation in his hand. The 9th Tao pattern emitted rays of divine light. Within the Phoenix Tribulation, There seemed to be a supreme divine beast gradually awakening. However, the Iron-Blood Daoist was not a saint. It was difficult for him to unleash the true power of this divine weapon. In the end, the 9th Tao pattern on the Phoenix Tribulation did not materialize. Don't struggle anymore. Chapter 22:15. The first Divine General's attack was extremely powerful. He charged into the valley and slammed a palm at the Iron-Blood Daoist. Boom! An immeasurable amount of divine light rushed out from the first Divine General's right hand and spread out in all directions. A huge earthen hand the size of a mountain covered half of the world, cutting off all paths of retreat for the Iron-Blood Daoist. The first Divine General was an ancient saint. Even though he had sealed his saint-level cultivation, his body was still a true saint physique. To a certain extent, a saint physique was equivalent to a saint weapon in human form. The first Divine General didn't need to worry about the Phoenix Tribulation in the Iron-Blood Daoist's hand. Bam! The earthy hand pushed forward, and the 2 fire phoenixes in front of it immediately exploded, revealing their true forms. 2 lines of the way shone with dazzling divine light, attracting the power of the great path to resist the earthy hand. However, the first Divine General was truly powerful. The first Divine General under the South Pole Immortal Sovereign definitely had a great background that ordinary ancient saints couldn't compare to. The 2 Phoenix runes couldn't resist the hand and collapsed in the void, destroyed by the hand. The Iron-Blood Daoist was shocked to see this. This opponent was incredible. The Immortal Father really thought highly of him to send someone like this to kill him. Roar! The Iron-Blood Daoist roared and his long hair fluttered in the wind. He desperately poured the essence in his body into the Phoenix Tribulation in his hand and used it to suppress the incoming hand. Buzz! The Phoenix Tribulation trembled and a powerful sacred beast aura spread out. The 9th rune in the center of the Phoenix Tribulation seemed to show signs of rushing out. 8 Phoenix runes rushed out from the Phoenix Tribulation and intertwined into a mysterious pattern. A phoenix cry resounded through the 9 heavens. 8 Phoenix Tao patterns gathered together and turned into a blazing phoenix. The aura of an extremely powerful saint beast filled the entire space. Clang! The phoenix spread its wings, and the golden feathers actually emitted a metallic sound. They were like golden divine swords, as if they could turn into heavenly swords at any time and fly up to kill the enemy. They were incomparably real, as if the real 9 heavens divine phoenix had descended. Even the first Divine General was moved when he sensed the power of the divine phoenix. Boom! The divine phoenix that was formed by interweaving Tao patterns charged directly at the earth-colored hand. That was the power of the thick earth. The first Divine General was not simple. He cultivated the power of earth of the 5 elements. The power of the earth element was vast and vigorous. Once it was cultivated to the great accomplishment realm, every movement would contain great power, especially the power of the thick earth. As long as one's feet were on the ground, one wouldn't have to worry about Jin Yuan drying up. However, there were not many people who could cultivate the earth elemental power to the great accomplishment realm. The first godly general was one of them. This was a terrifying confrontation. The golden divine phoenix collided with the earth-colored hand. The void was annihilated and the heavens and earth were penetrated. The vast and mighty destructive power turned into a terrifying energy wave that swept out in all directions. Everything in its path was directly torn apart and obliterated. In the valley, everyone turned pale with fright. It was impossible for them to resist this kind of power. If they were to be affected by it, their bodies and souls would be destroyed. Outrageous! I don't want to die! Someone from the 12 bandits roared. However, in the face of such power, even Jiyu Zhong and Zhu Galiang were helpless. Although Jiyu Zhong also had a saint tool, it was useless. With Jiyu Zhong's current cultivation, it was difficult for him to truly unleash the power of a saint tool. If he had broken through to the half-saint realm, the situation would be different. However, reality was cruel. Swoosh! Just when everyone was in despair, a figure suddenly fell from the sky and landed in front of them. Ooah! The person spat out a large mouthful of blood. The clothes on his chest were dyed red. Boss! The 12 bandits were shocked to see this person. This person was the Iron-Blood Daoist. At this moment, the Iron-Blood Daoist's face was as pale as paper and he was panting. It was obvious that he was badly injured. Rumble, the destructive storm was rapidly approaching. The Iron-Blood Daoist didn't say anything. He directly waved his hand and took everyone into his inner world. He then used the Phoenix Tribulation to protect himself and soared into the sky in an attempt to escape. The first godly general was too powerful. The Iron-Blood Daoist was no match for him. If it wasn't for the Phoenix Tribulation, he would have been killed by the first godly general many times over. Want to leave? Just accept your death. The first godly general's voice resounded. He only took one step forward and completely ignored the destructive storm that could tear the sky apart as he chased after the Iron-Blood Daoist. It won't be that easy to kill me. The Iron-Blood Daoist's entire body seemed to be on fire. He turned into a ray of fire and instantly rushed thousands of miles away. His speed was so fast that even the first godly general was taken aback. You can't escape. The first godly general wasn't in a hurry. He raised his right hand and a layer of earth-colored brilliance appeared in front of the Iron-Blood Daoist. Dao runes could be vaguely seen in the void. The Iron-Blood Daoist was both shocked and furious. Not only did the opponent set up the Nine Swords killing formation, but he also had a backup plan that sealed the surrounding area with Dao runes. This was too shocking. He didn't seem to have any deep grudges with the Earth Immortal Father. They just had some conflicts. This Earth Immortal Father was really narrow-minded. It was just a small grudge, yet he didn't hesitate to use such a method to kill him. It was hard to imagine that someone like this could also cultivate to the demisage stage. No one has ever escaped from the people I want to kill. The first godly general's voice resounded behind the Iron-Blood Daoist. A chilling killing intent had already enveloped the Iron-Blood Daoist, making him feel a great threat. You won't live even if you kill me, the Iron-Blood Daoist sneered. He slowly turned around and looked at the first godly general. Is that so? I know what you're talking about. That Jiu Fei is also my target. If he dares to appear, I'll twist his head off. The first godly general said. Who wants to twist my head off? At this moment, a voice suddenly rang out nearby. My lord, you're finally back. The Iron-Blood Daoist looked in the direction of the voice and saw two figures standing on a mountain peak dozens of miles away. Who else could it be but Jiu Fei? At this moment, the Iron-Blood Daoist finally felt how cute Jiu Fei was. You're Jiu Fei? The first godly general's eyes narrowed the moment he looked at Jiu Fei. His face revealed a look of disbelief. You've actually become a sage. Chapter 22:17. You've actually become a saint. The first divine general's shock was no small matter. Everything he knew about Jiu Fei had changed dramatically. He had actually become a saint. Only the first divine general, who was also a saint, could sense the true aura of the divine path emanating from Jiu Fei. Who are you? How dare you attack my people? Jiu Fei stood at the peak of the mountain. He could also sense the obscure power of the 9 Dao patterns on the first divine general's body. Only a saint could truly control this power. Jiu Fei, you've actually become a saint. At this moment, a cry of surprise came from the distant sky. Lu Xian Wang. Jiu Fei looked up into the sky and saw a divine island floating in the clouds. The sound of the great Dao could be heard. It was an island branded with the Dao patterns of a saint. So it's you. Jiu Fei was somewhat surprised. He didn't seem to have offended anyone from the South Pole Immortal Mansion. Why would this Lu Xian Wang send such an expert to kill the Iron-Blood Daoist? Outrageous. I don't have a chance anymore. First Divine General, kill them all. Lu Xian Wang roared. Only one person could become a saint in a lifetime. Since Jiu Fei had already become a saint, then in this lifetime, no one else would have the chance to become a saint. This almost drove Lu Xian Wang crazy. He was indeed the younger brother of the South Pole Immortal Venerable. He had always been under the protection of the South Pole Immortal Venerable and had lived since the ancient times until now. Although Lu Xian Wang had lived for a very long time, his aptitude was too poor. After countless years of cultivation, He had only reached the saint-to-be realm. He had experienced countless great eras, but he had never been able to become a saint. He had wanted to become a saint in this lifetime and had made all the preparations. However, man proposes, God disposes. He hadn't even entered the chaotic divine soil when Jiu Fei had already become a saint. This was equivalent to cutting off his path to becoming a saint. How could he not go crazy? When the first divine general heard this, he wanted to kill the Ironblood Daoist first and then Jiu Fei. However, the moment he moved, he suddenly felt an extreme sense of danger. Swish! A figure appeared outside the divine shield of thick earth and tore it apart, pressing towards the first divine general with unparalleled power. You! The first divine general's heart trembled. Jiu Fei had once made a name for himself on the ancestral star of Buzhou and was the emperor among his peers. The first divine general didn't dare to look down on Jiu Fei. My lord. Ironblood Daoist walked towards Jiu Fei. Where are the others? Jiu Fei asked. Jiu Fei, Lord, Wang said. Don't worry, master. I've already taken them into my inner world. The Ironblood Daoist hurriedly said. You can leave now. Jiu Fei nodded and said. From the beginning to the end, he didn't even look at Ironblood Daoist. At this moment, he was highly focused on the first divine general. Once the other party made any strange movements, he would attack him immediately. You haven't even heard of me, the first divine general. The first divine general was a little surprised. Master, this person is the first divine general under the South Pole Immortal Reverend, an ancient saint. Ironblood Daoist hurriedly explained to Jiu Fei through voice transmission, then he walked out of the light screen Jiu Fei had broken and retreated into the distance. The first divine general? Jiu Fei had already arrived in front of the first divine general. He found that this opponent gave him an unfathomable feeling. This person was like a barrel of gunpowder that could explode at any time, extremely dangerous. Clang. At this time, the first divine general operated a great technique. 9 rays of sword light soared into the sky and turned into sword rainbows. They emitted powerful energy fluctuations and slashed towards Jiu Fei. The first divine general attracted the power of the 9 swords killing formation. Humph! Jiu Fei snorted coldly. He had no intention of dodging at all. He directly waved his fists and smashed them towards the incoming sword rainbows, using his body to resist the power of the killing formation. The first divine general personally controlled the 9 swords killing formation. The power of the formation was immediately raised to a higher level, and it emitted a terrifying energy fluctuation. Clang! Jiu Fei waved his fists and smashed away all the 9 rainbows. This scene made everyone who saw it dumbfounded. This person's physical strength was too strong. It should be known that the sword chi condensed by the 9 swords killing formation was absolutely comparable to the power of a true divine tool. Kill. Without any hesitation, Jiu Fei directly threw out a primal chaos fist. The primal chaos chi was vast and mighty, and the void in front of his fist directly collapsed, forming a series of pitch-black cracks. So strong. Is he really a guy who just became a saint? The first divine general was incomparably shocked. The feeling that Jiu Fei gave him was even more powerful and terrifying than some ancient saints. He directly soared into the sky and dodged Jiu Fei's punch. Suppress! The first divine general shouted and formed a seal with both hands. The power of thick earth from 10 directions frantically gathered and condensed into a thick earth seal, which pressed down on Jiu Fei below. Rumble! Countless Tao patterns interweaved, and the thick earth seal pressed down from the sky like an ancient divine mountain. The terrifying power shattered the world and sealed the void. Although the first godly general had sealed his saint-level cultivation, his fighting strength was still many times stronger than that of an ordinary advanced saint-level expert. These ancient saints who had survived from the antiquity age were simply the killers of quasi-saints. Unfortunately, Jiu Fei was not a quasi-saint. Open for me! Jiu Fei soared into the sky and punched upwards with both fists. The powerful primal chaos fist broke through the vast power of thick earth from the sky, and then fiercely punched the thick earth seal. Boom! The power of the chaotic martial body instantly erupted from Jiu Fei's fists like 100,000 volcanoes, and the thick earth seal made of interweaved Dao patterns was shattered by his punch. What a powerful saint body! How is this possible? The first divine general was truly shocked this time. The opponent's martial body was too powerful, like a peerless divine weapon in human form. It was so easy for him to break the first divine general's technique. Who is that? How can he fight endlessly with the first divine general of the South Pole, Immortal Reverend? Someone was watching the battle from afar. Although the first divine general had not shown his face for a long time, no one in the cultivation world of Buzhou Ancestral Star dared to forget this terrifying god of war. The South Pole Immortal Abode had a transcendent status, and the Abode Lord was elusive. The great reputation of the South Pole Immortal Abode on Buzhou Ancestral Star was almost entirely earned by the first divine general. In the cultivation world of Buzhou Ancestral Star, some of the older figures had seen the supreme divine might of this god of war. This is troublesome. This Jiu Fei has actually become a saint. Chapter 22:18. Jiu Fei fought against the number one godly general, causing the entire heaven and earth to tremble. The powerful force tore the void apart, causing black cracks to appear like black lightning bolts. Too strong. At this moment, the Iron Blood Daoist had already retreated far away. When he saw this scene, he couldn't help but be astonished. A saint was indeed terrifying, not something a quasi-saint could compare to. Even if he couldn't display his saint cultivation base and battle prowess, the strength of his saint physique was enough to kill a quasi-saint. This was the gap between them, an insurmountable gap. Kill. At this moment, the hundreds of experts had already rushed towards the Iron Blood Daoist. They were a group of godly generals under the South Pole Immortal Manor, each of them was a powerful expert. Among these hundreds of experts, even the weakest one was a half-saint. From this, one could tell how deep the foundation of the South Pole Immortal Manor was. Chumph, the Iron Blood Daoist sneered. Even though he wasn't a match for the number one godly general, it didn't mean that he wasn't a match for these people. Buzz. The Iron Blood Daoist shook the Phoenix Tribulation in his hand. 8 Phoenix Daoist runes shot out from the Phoenix Tribulation, transforming into a divine bird that charged towards the hundreds of experts. Rumble. The heaven and earth trembled. It was as though 8 suns had appeared in the sky. The terrifying true fire of the divine phoenix erupted, turning half the sky red. Clang. Among the hundreds of people, a metallic clang could be heard. After that, a dazzling sword light soared into the sky, slashing towards the 8 suns. The sword chi spread for 30,000 miles. The sword light was so dazzling that it seemed as though it was going to split the heaven and earth into two. That sword Dao expert made his move. The chilling sword chi caused one's heart to palpitate. With a single slash of his sword, he actually displayed an invincible and terrifying battle intent. That sword Dao expert was truly powerful. With just a single slash of his sword, he managed to block the 8 golden suns formed by the Phoenix Daoist runes. Good. The Iron Blood Daoist's heart trembled. The other party had the advantage in numbers. Among these people, there were a few who were extremely powerful and their battle prowess wasn't any weaker than his. Roar. A furious roar rang out. Just as the expert of the Way of the Sword blocked the Iron Blood Daoist's Phoenix Tribulation, a figure covered in murderous intent charged out from the crowd. Boom. That person seemed to have gone mad as he charged through the divine sun formed by the 8 Phoenix Dao patterns and threw a punch at the Iron Blood Daoist. The air trembled as the shadow of a black dragon rushed out from the man's fist. It instantly turned into a 10,000-meter-long black dragon that emitted an extremely ferocious aura as it pounced towards the Iron Blood Daoist. "It's you, madman." The Iron Blood Daoist couldn't help being startled. This person was one of the most powerful people in this group. Bang! The Iron Blood Daoist directly pressed forward with the Phoenix Tribulation in his hand. The black dragon that was charging towards him immediately exploded in the void. Without any words, the Iron Blood Daoist and the savage began to fight. A ball of divine fire emitted by the divine sun floated around him. The sword Dao expert was also attacking. Resplendent sword light constantly collided with the 8 divine suns. With the sword Dao expert fighting against the savage, the others all retreated far away. If the two of them couldn't kill the Iron-Blood Daoist, then it was even more impossible for the others. While the Iron-Blood Daoist was fighting against the two experts, the first Divine General had already activated the Nine Swords killing formation. The battle against Ji Fei had reached its climax. Clang! Resplendent rays of sword light soared into the sky, transforming into 9 heavenly swords that slashed towards Ji Fei. The formation activated and powerful ripples spread in all directions. Although this power hadn't reached the saint level, it was still shocking enough. This kind of battle prowess was definitely infinitely close to the saint level. Only those who had sealed their saint level cultivation could do that. Haha! Ji Fei laughed in the 9 swords killing formation. 9 resplendent rays of sword light shot towards him. The destructive power could even shatter the void. However, this kind of attack was still not enough for Ji Fei. He swung his fists and threw out one punch after another. Although the punches were slow, they had a magical power. Ji Fei displayed his undefeatable punches and fought against the 9 swords killing formation all by himself. The 9 ancient swords were constantly knocked away by Ji Fei's punches. The scene was extremely shocking. Everyone who witnessed it was dumbfounded. It was hard to imagine that someone could cultivate their body to such a powerful level. Ji Fei rampaged in the 9 swords killing formation. Even the first Divine General couldn't do anything to Ji Fei. "You're the successor of the martial progenitor," the first Divine General exclaimed. At this moment, he finally realized Ji Fei's background. This person had obtained the inheritance of the supreme martial progenitor. As an ancient saint, the first Divine General knew how powerful the sacred physique was. It was definitely a sacred weapon in human form. Ji Fei didn't say anything. Instead, he sent a palm towards the first Divine General. He struck out with the heaven-shrouding palm. A giant chaotic palm materialized in the void in front of him and covered the entire sky. Rumble! The giant chaotic palm emitted a pitilessly powerful wave of energy. It smashed down towards the first Divine General from the sky and turned a large portion of the void into nothingness. Buzz! The killing formation was activated and the void vibrated. The first Divine General drove the 9 swords killing formation with all his might. The 9 formation suppressing divine swords emitted an unprecedentedly powerful wave of sword chi. Those were the 9 sacred swords. At this moment, the power contained within the 9 sacred swords seemed to have been completely awakened. Countless Dao patterns emerged from the 9 swords killing formation. The first Divine General exerted his full strength and pushed the 9 swords killing formation to its strongest state. It went up against the descending chaotic palm. Rumble! The 2 heaven-shaking forces collided. This was a great destruction. The destructive storm that swept out tore everything apart, leaving nothing behind. The 9 swords killing formation blocked Ji Fei's heaven-shrouding palm. However, even though the chaotic palm was blocked, the powerful force from the palm destroyed a small portion of the killing formation's formation runes, greatly reducing the killing formation's power. This person is too strong. The ancient saints who were watching the battle from afar were dumbfounded. Ji Fei's strength was a little too ridiculous. It was hard to imagine that this person had just become a saint not long ago. This Ji Fei, high up in the sky, on the Divine Island, the Earth-immortal old man was also shocked. The combat strength displayed by Yi Futian was too shocking. This was not a good thing for him and the entire South Pole Immortal Mansion. Chapter 22:19. If this is all you've got, then die. The first godly general's words were extremely cold. Then, his entire body emitted Dao patterns. Earth dragons formed from the power of the earth rose from the ground. All the earth dragons rushed towards the first godly general and entered his body. The first godly general used a great technique to attract the power of the earth. Roar! Endless power of the earth entered his body. The first godly general roared to the sky. The powerful sound waves shook the entire world. It was as if a god of war had descended. At this moment, Ji Fei had the illusion that the first godly general seemed to have unlocked all the seals on him and was displaying his supreme power. Of course, This was only Ji Yufei's illusion. Outside the chaotic divine soil, no sage would dare to undo the seals on him and restore his cultivation and combat ability to the sage level. Ji Yufei knew that this was not absolute. That Jiang Renhuang had unlocked the seals and restored his cultivation as a Renhuang. However, he was a supreme Renhuang who could stand shoulder to shoulder with a supremacy. Jiang Renhuang's understanding of the Great Path was not something an ordinary sage could compare with. Although the first godly general was strong, he was still far from being comparable to Jiang Renhuang. The power of the earth and the power of the killing formation of the 9 swords fused together perfectly, forming a terrifying power that made the world lose its color. Seeing this, Ji Yufei's eyes narrowed. The first godly general was indeed extraordinary. This power was infinitely close to the sage level. Kill. The power that the first godly general gathered had reached a point where he had to use it. The 9 sword lights had turned into the color of the earth. Although they had lost their dazzling divine light, their power was many times stronger than before. With such power, it wouldn't be a problem to kill a great perfection quasi-sage. Even the Iron-Blood Daoist would be killed instantly if he was trapped in this strengthened version of the 9 swords killing formation. Very well. Facing such a powerful opponent, Ji Yufei had to be serious. Boom. The void shook and an extremely strong wave of power exploded from Ji Yufei. 9 primordial Dao patterns appeared faintly on his body. Faint sounds of the Great Path could be heard coming from his body. You still have some strength left. The first godly general's eyes brightened. Rumble. The void around Ji Yufei was shaking. The entire void seemed to be unable to contain his martial body. His strength was still soaring. The first godly general felt that something was wrong. His opponent's power was soaring rapidly, and his powerful aura swept through the entire world. This was not normal. This Ji Yufei must have mastered a secret technique that could instantly increase his combat power. In just a few breaths of time, his combat power had actually increased several times. Let's fight. Ji Yufei's eyes were like lightning. He took a step forward and barged into the 9 swords killing formation laid out by the first divine general, completely ignoring the 9 earth-colored sword lights. Clang! Ji Yufei punched out, and the sword light that was slashing down was immediately dispersed by him. It was extremely powerful. Kill! The first godly general roared angrily. The 9 swords killing formation immediately began operating crazily. The 9 sword lights emitted divine light that reached the sky, triggering the endless power of the earth. With just a slight tremble, the 9 rays of sword light tore through the void and shattered the world, displaying a pitilessly terrifying power. The 9 sword lights rushed towards Ji Yufei, who had barged into the formation. Every sword light was as huge as a mountain. They were unstoppable, as though they could destroy everything in the world. The countenance of the first godly general was incomparably heavy. How many years has it been? He had fought for the South Pole immortal manor, fighting for fame, but it was very rare for him to meet an opponent as powerful as Ji Yufei. Chaos into yin and yang. Ji Yufei bellowed. The chaos chi on his body began to turn black and white. A yin and yang diagram emerged from his body. The divine diagram revolved and faced the 9 sword lights that were coming at him. The 9 extremely powerful sword lights were actually shifted away by the yin-yang diagram. They did not even touch the corner of Ji Yufei's clothes. Yin-yang sword of life and death. Ji Yufei waved his hands and the yin and yang chi quickly gathered on his hands. Swoosh. Swoosh. 2 sword lights, one black and one white, rushed out from his hands and pierced towards the first godly general in the 9 swords killing formation. The power of yin and yang intertwined, causing the power of the 2 sword lights to multiply. The yin-yang sword lights were like a hot knife through butter. They broke through the layers of earth power and pierced towards the first godly general. Bang! The first godly general made his move. He formed a seal with his right hand and pushed it forward. The 2 yin-yang sword lights immediately exploded. The moment the first godly general made his move and shattered Ji Yufei's yin-yang sword lights, the first godly general suddenly felt an extreme danger approaching rapidly. Good fella. The first godly general did not think much and disappeared on the spot. The moment the first godly general disappeared, a fist smashed out from the thick earth energy in front of him. The powerful fist force directly punched a hole in the spot where the first godly general was standing. The power of his physical body has reached such a level, the first godly general was secretly shocked. This opponent was incredible. His chaotic martial body was extremely powerful. Every move he made contained great power. Swoosh! Ji Fei did not show his real body. Instead, he rushed towards the first godly general. He displayed his 8 steps extreme speed, which was so fast that few could match up to him. Boom! A thunderous sound was heard. Ji Fei caught up with the first godly general and clashed with him. The two figures quickly separated. Buzz! The first godly general separated his hands and 9 sword lights appeared around him, emitting a monstrous cold sword chi. Awesome! Ji Fei's blood was boiling. This opponent was not bad. He was much stronger than the blood-haired kid from the extraterrestrial Divine Mountain. Only such an existence was qualified to be his opponent. At this time, high up in the sky, on the Divine Island, the Earth Immortal Elder and the middle-aged man surrounded by purple chi were extremely shocked. They never thought that Ji Fei could fight with the first godly general. How is this possible? The Earth Immortal Elder's voice trembled. He knew very well how terrifying the first godly general was. He was an ancient saint. Even his brother was polite to the first godly general. He did not see the first godly general as a subordinate, but as a brother. This Ji Fei has finally grown up. The middle-aged man sighed and said. Chapter 2220. Just as Ji Fei and the first divine general were fighting, a sneaky figure snuck onto the divine island in the sky. It was silent and didn't attract anyone's attention. Kill. At this time, the Ironblood Daoist was also fighting against the first divine general's subordinates. His murderous intent soared to the sky as he fought against 2 experts who were no weaker than him. Roar. A crazed man with disheveled hair roared like a wild beast. His body emitted an incomparably wild aura as he pounced towards the Ironblood Daoist. This was a man like a wild beast. As he leaped and moved, he was like an unstoppable dragon emerging from the sea, and at other times, he was as agile as a divine eagle, spreading its wings and soaring. The man who looked like a ferocious beast was an exception. This simple and direct action displayed an unbelievably powerful might. Whoosh! A corner of Ironblood Daoist's sleeve was torn off by the savage. Ironblood Daoist felt a burning sensation on his forearm. He quickly looked down and saw that there were 5 dark red finger marks on his left forearm. Buzz! The Ironblood Daoist was both shocked and angry. He shook the Phoenix Tribulation in his hand and forced the man back. Just as the Ironblood Daoist was forcing the man back, the Sword Master made his move. A dazzling sword light soared into the sky and turned into a huge dragon, pouncing towards the Ironblood Daoist. Sword Chi Dragon. The Ironblood Daoist's heart skipped a beat. This Sword Master was indeed outstanding on the path of the sword. He was confident that he could destroy everything with a sword in his hand. Rumble. The Ironblood Daoist activated the Phoenix Tribulation in his hand. Beams of fire essence rushed out of the simple divine item and interweaved into a light net, protecting him. The dragon-shaped sword chi swooped down from the sky. Boom! With a loud sound, the dragon shadow sword chi crashed heavily into the protective light around the Ironblood Daoist. The entire space shook, and pitch-black spatial cracks spread out in all directions with the 2 of them at the center. The Ironblood Daoist was cut down from the sky by the Sword Master. Roar! The Ironblood Daoist roared into the sky with a murderous aura. Ever since he started cultivating, he had never been slashed down from the sky by someone. Seal 10 directions. The Ironblood Daoist held the Phoenix Tribulation in his hand and charged towards the Sword Master. 8 divine runes rushed out from the Ironblood Daoist's Phoenix Tribulation, instantly sealing off a part of the world. It was as if the void was about to freeze. The swordsman's body swayed, and his movements slowed down. This is bad. The expert swordsman was taken aback. At this moment, the Ironblood Daoist had already arrived in front of him. He held the Phoenix Tribulation in his hand and smashed it down on the Sword Master. Bang! With a muffled sound, The expert swordsman was smashed down from the sky by the Ironblood Daoist, creating a large crater in the ground. The Ironblood Taoist was extremely domineering. After sending the sword Dao expert flying, he immediately attacked the savage. That ferocious person was extremely ferocious, and he actually seemed as if he didn't know what fear was. He still attacked Ji Yufei, and the ferocious might he revealed was horrifying. "If you want to die, I'll grant your wish." As he spoke, the Ironblood Daoist performed a great technique and activated the Phoenix Tribulation in his hand. An extremely powerful sealing power spread from the Phoenix Tribulation. Without any suspense, the Ironblood Daoist took advantage of the moment when the savage's body paused. With a single punch, the savage was sent flying while coughing up blood. The Ironblood Daoist cultivated the Phoenix technique, and his body was also very strong. It would definitely not be a good thing to be hit by a punch from him. Whoosh! A pair of golden wings appeared on the Ironblood Daoist's back. They were wings condensed from the Phoenix's power, and were not real wings. The pair of wings flapped, and the Ironblood Daoist's body disappeared in an instant. In the next moment, he appeared in the sky above the flying savage. Die! The Ironblood Daoist's golden divine fire danced all over his body. He seemed to have turned into a ninth heaven phoenix, and he swooped down from the sky, tearing at the savage with both hands. The savage screamed and was torn in half by the Ironblood Daoist's iron claws. Blood splattered everywhere, and the stench was enough to make people want to vomit. "You're ferocious, but I'm even more ferocious." The Ironblood Daoist's words were extremely cold. At that moment, a beam of divine light appeared in the blood mist, trying to escape. However, the Ironblood Daoist directly destroyed the beam of divine light. Both body and soul were destroyed. That was how cultivators died. Voom! Just as the Ironblood Daoist killed the beast-like savage, the swordsman attacked again. Sword light shot into the sky, and sword chi crisscrossed. The Ironblood Daoist was surrounded by dazzling sword light. The sword light interweaved into a large net, trapping him inside. The swordsman was attacking with all his might. At that moment, on Ji Yufei's side, Ji Yufei displayed all kinds of martial arts and battle skills, forcing the first divine general to constantly retreat, not daring to fight him head-on. The chaotic martial body was extremely powerful. Even someone as strong as the first divine general was shocked to the extreme. This was definitely an indestructible treasure body. Clang! 9 beams of sword light shot into the sky. The 9 swords killing array was activated, displaying a terrifying power that could destroy heaven and earth. A large area of the void was annihilated. The first divine general was no longer relaxed. He was fighting with all his might. There were not many people in this world who could force the first divine general to fight with all his might. Obviously, Ji Yufei was one of them. Inside the 9 swords killing array, Ji Yufei was surrounded by 9 primal chaos Dao patterns. The 9 Dao patterns sealed the void where Ji Yufei was and blocked all the destructive swordlights that slashed at him. The 9 primordial Dao patterns were really mystical. As Ji Yufei learned more about the 9 primordial Dao patterns, his understanding of his great Dao was also constantly improving. The 9 primordial Dao patterns were so powerful that they could even fight against the power that could destroy saints. Boom! Just as Ji Yufei was about to use his trump card and end this battle, a loud sound suddenly came from the sky. He hurriedly looked in the direction of the sound and saw that a divine island was shaking violently high up in the sky. Countless runes rushed out from the divine island and then dissipated in the air. Roar! A furious roar came from the divine island in the sky. "Who is it that dares to behave atrociously in my place?" It was Lu Di Immortal Father's voice. His voice was filled with murderous intent. At this moment, Lu Di Immortal Father really wanted to kill someone because the array on his divine island was collapsing. His subordinates came to report that a few of the medicinal fields on the divine island had been raided and all the spirit medicines had been looted. Hearing this news, Lu Di Immortal Father almost vomited blood. Chapter 22-21. Rumble. High up in the sky, an incomparably shocking rumbling sound rang out. A divine island was trembling. Countless runes rushed out from the divine island before dissipating into the air. At this moment, everyone was shocked to the extreme. On the third stage of the ancient road of the human race, everyone knew what that mysterious island in the sky represented. The island is collapsing. Someone actually dared to attack that person. Everyone who witnessed this scene was incomparably shocked. In the past few years, the people from the South Pole Immortal Manor had almost taken control of the third stage. The Earth Immortal Old Man seemed to think that he was the master of the third stage of the human race's ancient road, and that he was in control of the transportation formation. Even the other superforces were unwilling to offend Earth Immortal Old Man, so they didn't care much about his control of the teleportation formation platform. So someone still dared to attack Earth Immortal Old Man. Some people were gloating. Roar. At this moment, the furious roar of Earth Immortal Old Man was heard from the island. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Someone had sneaked onto the island without anyone knowing. Earth Immortal Old Man wanted nothing more than to tear that person into a million pieces. That person actually broke the grand formation of the island, causing the runes of the grand formation to be destroyed. Gradually losing the protection of the grand formation, the edge of the island began to collapse. The runes of the formation were dissipating, and the spiritual energy that the island had accumulated for millions of years was also rapidly leaking out. The person who attacked secretly was too despicable. Not only did he break the grand formation of the island, but he also looted all the medicinal fields on the island. He didn't even let go of the spiritual herbs that had yet to fully mature. On the island, Earth Immortal Old Man's subordinates began to search the island. They wanted to find the mysterious person. However, at this moment, a young cultivator in black robes was standing in a forest on the Divine Island. Haha, I've struck it rich. I didn't expect this island to have so many spiritual herbs. The young man in black wanted to laugh out loud, but he was able to control his emotions. He held a bag made of animal skin in his hand that was glowing faintly. Inside the beast skin bag were the spiritual herbs that he had collected from the herb farm on the Divine Island. The master of the Divine Island is simply a tycoon. Hei Tian's harvest was not bad. The reason why the Divine Island's grand formation was collapsing was because of him. One should know that the Divine Island's grand formation was not an ordinary grand formation. Only Hei Tian, who was a formation grandmaster, had such means. Buzz. At this time, the void around the Divine Island trembled. Earth Immortal Old Man was using a great technique to stop the island's grand formation from collapsing, but it was all in vain. Boom. In the Divine Island, a mountain suddenly collapsed. Black cracks appeared on the ground. These cracks were so deep that the bottom could not be seen. The purple-robed middle-aged man beside Lu Di's Yan Wang could no longer sit still. If anything happened to Lu Di's Yan Wang, then he would also have to bear the consequences. Shua. A mass of divine light rushed out of the middle-aged man's body, which looked like a purple sun. Wrapped in the divine light was a large purple seal. Suppress. The purple-robed middle-aged man formed a seal with both hands and activated his mysterious art. The purple seal immediately soared into the sky and expanded to the size of a mountain. Billions of purple divine lights shone from the seal, and a powerful pressure that could shake the heavens appeared in this part of the world. The seal fell from the sky and directly pressed down on the ground. A powerful shockwave spread out, causing the ground to undulate like waves. The Divine Island that was still collapsing gradually calmed down. The momentum of the Divine Island Great Formation that was constantly collapsing finally slowed down. This is, Earth Immortal Old Man's eyes narrowed when he saw the seal. This middle-aged man actually had his clan's supreme treasure with him. Cert. Even if we have to dig 3 feet into the ground, we must kill all those who dare to offend my South Pole Immortal Mansion. Earth Immortal Old Man gritted his teeth. His divine island was almost destroyed. This was a mobile palace given to him by his elder brother. Soon, Earth Immortal Old Man's subordinates found Hei Tian. Kill. After receiving the news, Earth Immortal Old Man charged towards Hei Tian's location. A powerful quasi-sage aura filled the sky. I've been discovered. Hei Tian charged out of the forest and headed towards the outside of the Divine Island. Trying to escape. Earth Immortal Old Man was already near. Swoosh. The earth-immortal old man raised his right hand, and a large net flew out from his hand and enveloped He Tian. It was a divine net with a faint layer of light flowing on it, and there was also a trace of water vapor. Buzz. Just as earth-immortal old man made his move, the void around He Tian vibrated. Formation runes appeared in the void and intertwined with each other, attracting a powerful force. Roar! Mahakala bellowed in rage. He grabbed the huge net that was descending from the sky, and with a tug of his hands, he actually tore a huge hole in the net. What? Seeing this, earth-immortal old man was truly shocked. That was a divine net made from rare divine materials. It contained the power of water, one of the 5 elements. Yet, someone had torn a hole in it. How much power was needed to tear a divine net like that apart? Formation in the void. He Tian displayed his formidable combat prowess. Matrix patterns kept appearing in the void around him, and one peerless heavenly sword after another appeared in the killing matrix, emanating a shocking sword aura. Those were not real peerless heavenly swords. They were just divine weapons formed from the power of the killing formation. However, even if they were not real peerless heavenly swords, the divine weapons formed from He Tian's killing formation were comparable to the real peerless heavenly swords. Go! He Tian waved his right hand at earth-immortal old man. The peerless heavenly swords formed from the killing formation rushed out from the killing formation and pierced towards earth-immortal old man. Powerful sword energy rippled in all directions, causing the surrounding temperature to drop. Who the hell are you? Earth-immortal old man flipped his right hand and a bronze mirror appeared in his palm. The surface of the mirror was engraved with ancient runes, giving off a feeling of immeasurable antiquity. This is... He Tian didn't answer earth-immortal old man. When he saw the bronze mirror, his eyes widened as if he wanted nothing more than to snatch it away. Swoosh! At that moment, the earth-immortal elder used the bronze mirror in his hand to shine it at the countless divine weapons. A black light rushed out of the mirror. That black light was extremely powerful. Under the illumination of the black light, the countless sword lights that pierced through the sky actually collapsed and dissipated in the void. It really is the legendary mirror. He Tian was astounded. Many cultivators appeared in the sky, many of them watching the battle. I didn't think the yin-yang mirror of life and death would fall into earth-immortal old man's hands. Some of the old-timers also figured out the origin of the bronze mirror in earth-immortal old man's hand, and one of them said, "I'll take your mirror." A greedy look appeared in Mahakala's eyes. The yin-yang mirror of life and death was already a very famous saint artifact in the ancient times when there were many experts. The bronze mirror had 2 sides, one of which could emit white light. This white light had a magical power that could revive the dead. The other side of the mirror represented death. No matter who it was, as long as they were illuminated by the black mirror, they would definitely die. No one could save them. One side of life, the other side of death. This was the yin-yang mirror of life and death. He Tian didn't dare to be hit by the black light that represented death. He soared into the sky, dodged the black light, and activated a killing formation. A shocking murderous aura emanated from his body. Clang! The sound of divine swords being unsheathed rang out. He Tian once again activated the killing formation's power, condensing countless sword lights and sending them at earth-immortal old man. "You're courting death." Earth-immortal old man roared. He activated the yin-yang mirror of life and death with all his might. A black light rushed out from the mirror and swept in all directions, blocking all the sword lights that were coming at him from all directions. 7-terminal formation. He Tian did not dare to be negligent. He immediately set up a great formation in the void that was brimming with murderous aura. The moment the formation took shape, the spirit chi of the world around it was drawn and gathered towards the killing formation in a frenzy. Rumble! The entire sky darkened as the 7-terminal formation's power erupted, transforming into all kinds of astronomical phenomena. For a moment, the 7-terminal formation was filled with the sound of thunder and lightning. From time to time, there would be heavy rain and howling winds. This was the 7 extremes formation. It could transform into 7 different types of celestial phenomena to kill the enemy. Hence, it was named the 7 extremes formation. Once the 7 extremes formation was activated, as long as the person inside didn't die, the killing formation wouldn't stop. This Earth Immortal old man was shocked. This opponent was very strong and could form a formation out of thin air. He was definitely a formation grandmaster. With the formation and man as one, his combat strength was inestimable. One should know that it had been a long time since a formation grandmaster had appeared on Bujo ancestral planet. Kill. However, when Earth Immortal old man thought about how all the spirit herbs he had painstakingly planted were stolen by this person, he almost went crazy. He wanted to pounce on this person and tear him apart. Without any hesitation, he charged at He Tian with the mirror in hand. Boom. At that moment, a powerful destructive force suddenly came down from the sky. A clap of thunder rang out above Earth Immortal old man's head, causing his ears to buzz. A thundercloud appeared in the sky. It was like a heavenly tribulation was descending, carrying a kind of heavenly might. How is this possible? Chapter 22:22. The killing formation of 7 law was activated. The patterns of the killing formation spread out continuously. Soon, the entire island was enveloped by the formation. Old man, you are not qualified to fight against me. Ha ha. He Tian laughed loudly in the middle of the killing formation. Formation grandmasters were not to be trifled with. Erebus was confident that he could compete with all experts below the level of sages with his ability to form formations out of thin air. Damn it. Lu Di's Yan Wang was furious. The world around him darkened completely. The tribulation cloud in the sky was descending towards him. It was like a real god's retribution. As long as one was not a saint realm cultivator, it would be difficult to fight against the power of the heaven and earth. Under the heaven's retribution, all living beings were like ants. Even a sage-to-be was just a slightly stronger ant before the heaven's retribution. Little friend, you are too much. At this moment, a purple figure shot up from the divine island and came to the sky. This person's entire body was shining with purple light. It was as if a purple sun had appeared in the killing matrix of 7 law. It was incomparably dazzling. Who the hell are you? He Tian stood in the void and scolded out loud. He was hidden within the killing formation and the other party could not see him. However, he could see the other party. I am Ziyang Unfettered. The purple-robed man said with a calm voice. The purple-robed man must have been shocked to hear his name. One should know that all the experts of the older generation in Buju Ancestral Star knew who he was. Even if they did not, they should have heard of his name. What Ziyang, Hongyang, I have never heard of you. He Tian said. What? When unfettered Ziyang heard this, the arrogance on his face instantly turned into shock. He felt his face heat up, as if he had flown into a rage out of humiliation. This brat, Ziyang Unfettered, was pissed off by He Tian. Hey, Ziyang or whatever. Since you've walked right into my trap, I'll reluctantly send you and that old man to the Western Paradise. Erebus said nonchalantly, as if he was talking about a trivial matter. Roar. The Earth Immortal old man roared in anger. How dare this fella look down on him? Damn it. Even Ziyang's loose cultivator was seething with anger. This island seems to have quite a few treasures. Erebus no longer cared about Nourishment Itinerant and Earth Immortal Father who were trapped in the killing formation. His eyes lit up when he noticed that there were a few spots on the divine island down below that were glowing with treasure lights. Lu Di's Yan Wang's expression changed when he heard this. As the master of this divine island, he naturally knew what was stored here. Moreover, a portion of these items did not belong to him. Haha, old man, you really are a nouveau riche, a big nouveau riche. He Tian smiled. He had cultivated the yin-yang godly eyes. With a single glance, he could see that the treasure light was hard to hide. On the divine island below, there were at least 3 places where treasure chi was seeping out. If you dare touch those things, I can guarantee that you won't be able to live. The Earth Immortal old man's voice was cold and filled with killing intent. Hihi, whether I live or not, that's my business. You should take care of yourself first. He Tian said as he rushed down to the divine island. At this time, the 7 law formation was already activated and he no longer needed to control it. At this time, the divine island was in chaos. Wind, rain, fire, thunder, lightning, all sorts of natural phenomena were wreaking havoc. If it weren't for the protection of the formation, all the buildings on the Divine Island would have been destroyed. Ha ha! Your Grandpa He is here. He Tian laughed as he descended from the sky. He looked like a demon that had just escaped. Trespassers will die. Just as He Tian landed on the ground, a loud shout rang out from beside him. Then, He Tian heard an extremely faint sound of something tearing through the air behind him. He Tian didn't even turn around. He just waved his right hand behind him and a scream was heard. Then, a figure was sent flying and smashed into the ground. No one knew if he was dead or alive. A small ant dares to behave atrociously in front of a dragon. He Tian said disdainfully. Kill him for me. The voice of the earth immortal old man came from the sky. All the cultivators on the Divine Island immediately rushed towards He Tian. They wanted to kill this guy who descended from the sky and get the earth immortal old man's attention. The earth immortal old man had a high status in the South Pole Immortal Mansion. Anyone who could get his attention would have a bright future. F***ck, I'm not afraid of you. As He Tian spoke, he conjured yin and yang. A yin-yang diagram emerged from his body. The power of yin and yang intertwined, causing the space around him to distort. Boom! At that moment, a fireball smashed towards Mahakala. The heat that spread out from the fireball was extremely terrifying. Even the void became a little unstable. 3 True Fire. He Tian disappeared from where he was. When he reappeared, he was like a tiger in a flock of sheep, rushing into the group of people who were coming for him. Suddenly, screams and screams were heard everywhere. Blood was seen in the crowd. He Tian was very strong. Those people were no match for him. In just a few breaths, more than half of them died under He Tian's fists. Rice bucket, a bunch of rice buckets. What's the point of raising you? The voice of the earth immortal old man came down from the sky. He Tian was going to loot the Divine Island again. This was definitely not a good thing for him. Rumble, the killing formation of 7 Law was in operation. Tribulation lightning descended as if it was undergoing a tribulation. The earth immortal old man was trapped in the killing formation of 7 Law. This grand formation could automatically gather spiritual chi from all directions, causing the power of the killing formation to increase by several times. At this moment, the purple-robed man roared in anger. He was also in big trouble. The power of the 7 celestial phenomenon was simply too strong. Even if they had treasures on them, it would still be hard for them to break through this killing formation. At this moment, He Tian didn't hold back. He directly broke open a pavilion. Within the half-destroyed pavilion, the glow of treasures shot up to the heavens as spiritual chi lingered around. Divine medicines, divine weapons, everything that one could wish for was here. There were even many cultivation arts. He Tian didn't hesitate. He was incomparably excited when he saw the treasures the size of a small mountain. After that, he kept everything into his internal world. This divine island was simply a divine treasury. There were many treasures stored on it. Kill. At this moment, the sounds of killing rang out from outside the killing formation of 7 Law. It was as though countless experts were rushing towards the divine island. The heaven-shaking killing intent caused the sky to change color. Chapter 22-23. The first godly general was extremely powerful. He was an existence close to an immortal venerable. Although he had sealed his cultivation and combat power, he could still fight against Jiu Fei. Boom! A loud sound was heard. A mountain in the depths of the mountain exploded. Dust and rocks flew everywhere as a silhouette rushed out. That person was wearing armor and had Dao runes all over his body. It was the first godly general. You really surprised me. The first godly general came to the front of Jiu Fei and said indifferently while looking at Jiu Fei. His entire body emitted a shocking aura. You're not bad either. The sleeve on Jiu Fei's right arm had already disappeared. The 5 bloody wounds on his arm were quickly healing. The powerful martial body allowed Jiu Fei to possess an almost immortal body. This was the terror of a saint-rank martial body. A saint-rank martial body possessed greater strength and recovery than an ordinary martial body. Even if he was seriously injured, a saint-level martial body would recover very quickly. Again. The first godly general felt a great pressure from Jiu Fei. It was a feeling that he hadn't felt for many years. It made him feel like he had returned to the ancient times when there were many powerful experts. "I'm not afraid of you." Jiu Fei was also filled with battle intent. The two powerful figures collided again. Rumble, at this moment, high up in the sky, the seven-law killing formation laid down by He Tian enveloped the entire island. Within the killing formation, wind, fire, thunder, lightning, rain, snow, frost, these seven celestial phenomena revolved unceasingly, as though wanting to obliterate everything. This was a celestial phenomenon. What was a celestial phenomenon? It was the power of heaven and earth. The seven-law formation was a killing formation that attracted the power of heaven and earth. The longer it operated, the more spiritual energy it would gather, and the more powerful it would be. Inside the killing formation, Earth Immortal Father and the man in purple were fighting against the killing formation. Meanwhile, He Tian had entered the Divine Island again and started a new round of looting. One had to admit that Earth Immortal Father's Divine Island had a lot of good things. Boom! Another strand of treasure aura surged out from the island. This time, 7 or 8 strands of resplendent light shot out from where the treasures were hidden. Each strand of light contained a god artifact. There are so many spiritual divine artifacts. Seeing the divine artifacts that flew out on their own, He Tian's eyes immediately lit up. He was surprised and happy. A few of the 7 or 8 spiritual divine equipment were weapons. Those weapons were all exceptional divine weapons, already developing intelligence. They flew out on their own, wishing to escape. However, the entire island had already been enveloped by the seven-law killing formation. With just a thought from He Tian, streaks of dazzling lightning struck down from the sky, intercepting the spiritual divine weapons that were trying to fly away. Rumble. A burst of lightning flashed, and immediately, 5 or 6 spiritual artifacts fell from the sky and were taken away by He Tian. Spiritual divine artifacts were powerful, but they were still divine artifacts, not sacred weapons. They couldn't have the ability to fight back on their own because they didn't have a true consciousness. Tycoon, this old man is so cute. At this time, in He Tian's eyes, Earth Immortal Father was the cutest person. This guy was definitely a tycoon, and He Tian loved to meet tycoons like him. What is that? Is it the legendary Tycoon Gold? At this time, there were still 3 spiritual divine artifacts moving quickly in the sky. They could actually dodge the lightning strikes from the sky. They were full of intelligence. Among the 3 spiritual god artifacts, there was a fist-sized piece of purple divine metal. Although it was only the size of an adult's fist, it was the one with the strongest spirituality out of the 3 god artifacts. Dragon Blood Divine Gold. He Tian's voice changed. That piece of purple gold seemed to be the legendary Tycoon Gold. Only a real tycoon could have it. According to the legends, it was a type of divine gold formed from the essence blood of the ancestral dragon. It was an almost immortal divine item and an extremely rare material for refining artifacts. Dragon Blood Divine Gold was very rare. After all, it was a divine item formed from the essence blood of an ancestral dragon. When refining an artifact, as long as some of this divine gold was mixed in, the artifact's grade would increase by a few levels. This kind of divine gold was also something that Supremes loved. Swoosh. He Tian couldn't sit still anymore. He shot into the sky towards the piece of divine gold that was emitting a misty purple aura and reached out to take it away. You're courting death. Earth Immortal Father almost went crazy when he saw this. He had paid a huge price to get his hands on this piece of dragon blood divine gold. In order to get it, he almost died in an ominous place where the ancestral dragon had fallen. Earth Immortal Father wanted to rush over and attack with all his might, but countless lightning bolts descended from above and trapped him in a blinding flash. He Tian's 7-law formation was not simple. Earth Immortal Father and Zi Yang Unfettered couldn't escape. However, just as He Tian was about to take the piece of dragon blood divine gold, a figure appeared in front of him without a sound. What? He Tian was shocked. He couldn't believe that someone could sneak up to him without him noticing. This person was definitely very powerful. Big brother, kill him for me. At that moment, Earth Immortal Father, who was trapped in the lightning tribulation, was shocked and angry. The person who suddenly appeared to stop He Tian was a young Daoist. The South Pole Immortal Sovereign. Ziyang Unfettered, who was trapped in the Sea of Fire, was shocked to see the young Daoist. This Daoist who suddenly appeared was the South Pole Immortal Sovereign. How could the South Pole Immortal Sovereign appear here? Daoist Purple Sun was bewildered. He couldn't see the young Daoist's face clearly because there was a strange power enveloping the young Daoist's body, causing him to look blurry and unreal. Preposterous. He Tian was annoyed, extremely annoyed. Seeing the dragon blood divine gold fly away from his hands, he was both shocked and angry. This young Daoist gave him a strong sense of oppression. Old Black, this guy is just a clone. He actually managed to scare you. At that moment, a voice came from the side. He Tian was overjoyed to hear this voice. He hurriedly looked in the direction of the voice and saw a young man standing not far behind him. Old Jiyu, you're finally here. He Tian smiled. With Jiyu Fei's help, the two of them could definitely empty the entire island. You don't seem to be a clone, or the main body. What's going on? The young Daoist looked at Jiyu Fei and said, Old Jiyu, you. Chapter 22-24. Jiyu Fei's celestial sovereign clone was a true celestial sovereign. The aura emanating from the celestial sovereign's clone made the South Pole celestial sovereign's clone wary. He didn't expect his opponent to have such a physique. The South Pole celestial sovereign's clone could tell that Jiyu Fei's clone was different. It didn't seem to be a clone, but the real body. Why did he feel this way? The South Pole celestial sovereign's clone was puzzled. He didn't expect Jiyu Fei's clone to be anything but ordinary. Back then, Jiyu Fei's nascent spirit was born and entered the celestial sovereign's body. To a certain extent, it had surpassed the scope of ordinary clones. It was like a brand new life form. Jiyu Fei's nascent spirit completely fused with the celestial sovereign's body and gradually gained control of it. Through this method, Jiyu Fei had already successfully split his primordial spirit that belonged to the immortal Tao. This way, there wouldn't be two different powers on his chaotic martial body. The immortal Tao and martial Tao would no longer coexist on Jiyu Fei's body. You must be the master of the South Pole Immortal Mansion on planet Buzhou. Jiyu Fei's celestial sovereign said. Lu Di was the South Pole celestial sovereign's brother, so it wasn't surprising that the South Pole celestial sovereign left behind a clone to protect Lu Di. You know who I am. Why aren't you scramming? The South Pole celestial sovereign's clone was very domineering, even when facing Jiyu Fei's celestial sovereign. Haha, you really don't know what's good for you. The one who should kneel and beg for mercy is you. He Tian laughed. He knew very well that Jiyu Fei wouldn't do something he wasn't confident in. Since he'd already made a move, it meant he wasn't afraid of this guy at all. If that's the case, then you can all die. The South Pole celestial sovereign's clone's tone turned cold. He reached out with his right hand and pressed towards He Tian and Jiyu Fei. Buzz. With a deafening cry, 18 dazzling divine lights rushed out of the palm of South Pole Immortal Venerable's incarnation. They were like 18 stars that appeared in the sky, emitting extremely powerful fluctuations of star energy. Stars in the palm. He Tian's heart skipped a beat when he saw this, and his pupils constricted involuntarily. Rumble. He Tian didn't dare to be negligent. He drew the power of the 7 law killing array. 7 divine lights representing wind, fire, lightning, rain, snow, frost, and the 7 celestial phenomena descended from the sky, piercing towards South Pole Immortal Venerable's incarnation. At the same time, He Tian quickly retreated. The power of the stars emitted by the 18 balls of divine light was too strong. It shattered the void, and he had no choice but to retreat. Shua. The 7 divine lights directly pierced through the South Pole Immortal Venerable's incarnation. 7 large holes appeared on the South Pole Immortal Venerable's incarnation. However, a scene that dumbfounded Jiyu Fei and He Tian appeared. The 7 holes on South Pole Immortal Venerable's incarnation rapidly healed. In just a few breaths, The 7 holes had disappeared. Seeing this, He Tian's heart trembled. Even Ji Fei's immortal sovereign sacred physique turned solemn. Haha, my big brother actually left an undying incarnation here. You too are dead for sure. Earth Immortal Father laughed. South Pole Immortal Venerable was mysterious and unfathomable. Even Lu Dizian Wang did not know what level his elder brother's cultivation had reached. However, Lu Dizian Wang knew that his elder brother had cultivated into an indestructible avatar. Undying incarnation. He Tian was startled, but he didn't have time to think. The 18 balls of divine light turned into stars and sealed the void, repelling the power of the 7-law formation. A bit interesting. Ji Fei's celestial sovereign avatar soared into the sky and punched out. The power of the celestial sovereign's sacred body burst forth and the 18 stars in the sky immediately trembled. Then, a gap was punched out and 5 or 6 stars were sent flying. What? South Pole Immortal Sovereign's incarnation was startled to see Ji Fei's immortal sovereign sacred physique break his grand art with one punch. This opponent was very strong. Let's see how you're undying. The glabella of Ji Fei's immortal venerable saint physique lit up and a vertical purple mark appeared. It was as if a heavenly eye was about to open and that vertical mark was vibrating. The 9 secrets of the immortal Tao. South Pole Immortal Sovereign's incarnation sensed the fluctuations from Ji Fei's immortal sovereign sacred physique and paled in fright. His opponent had cultivated the 9 secrets of the immortal Tao. This was big trouble. South Pole Immortal Sovereign's incarnation was shocked. Swoosh. At this time, a purple divine light shot out of Ji Fei's immortal sovereign sacred physique. It turned into a violet sword that slashed at South Pole Immortal Sovereign's incarnation. Divine runes of the Great Tao faintly appeared on the sword. A divine melody of the Great Tao seemed to come from the sword, resonating with the Great Tao of the world. The Sword of the Great Tao is indeed one of the 9 secrets of the immortal Tao. South Pole Immortal Sovereign's incarnation no longer had any doubts. His opponent had cultivated one of the 9 secrets of the immortal Tao, the Sword of the Great Tao. One should know that the 9 secrets of the immortal way were no longer complete since ancient times. In the current era, these 9 secret techniques were thought to have been lost in the world of cultivation. However, South Pole Immortal Venerable's incarnation could never have imagined that the 9 secrets of the immortal Tao that were thought to have been lost would reappear in this world. The endless starry sky. South Pole Immortal Sovereign's incarnation cast a great technique. A starry sky appeared around him and spread out in an instant. In an instant, the starry sky that spread out from South Pole Immortal Sovereign's incarnation enveloped everyone. Even the divine island and the killing formation of 7 law that He Tian had set up seemed to be moved to the endless starry sky. What? He Tian was shocked when he saw his surroundings change in an instant. Could this guy have taken him into his inner world in an instant? If that was the case, it would be terrible. He Tian had refined the grotto heaven left behind by the ancient sages on the Crimson Star. He knew very well how powerful his inner world was. If he was taken into someone else's inner world, he would become a piece of meat on their chopping board. It should be known that in someone else's inner world, the opponent would be the supreme god of the world. They could mobilize all the power in the world to kill their opponents. At that moment, He Tian was shocked to find that the killing formation of 7 law that he had set up was collapsing. In this endless starry sky, the killing formation of 7 law could not gather any spiritual chi of the world. Is this really heaven-defying? He Tian's expression turned ugly. Ha ha, Earth Immortal Elder laughed loudly. Earth Immortal Elder and Ziyang Unfettered had already broken free. Earth Immortal Elder waved his hand and put away the 3 divine items that were moving quickly in the void. My Dragon Blood Divine Gold. Chapter 22-25. The South Pole Immortal Venerable's clone used a great technique to pull everyone and the island into a boundless starry sky. It's just a clone, but it has such power. Ji Fei's sacred physique looked at the South Pole Immortal Venerable's clone and said indifferently. There was no expression on his face. No one knew what he was feeling right now. Kill. The South Pole Immortal Venerable's clone was very direct. Buzz. The starry sky trembled. Countless stars lit up and emitted bright starlight. The 18 brightest stars floated around South Pole Immortal Venerable's incarnation. The South Pole Immortal Venerate's incarnation was like an invincible god of war in the starry sky. He charged towards Gu Fei's Immortal Venerate sacred physique with surging killing intent. "Do you think I'm afraid of you?" Gu Fei's battle intent surged as he pressed forward. An extremely powerful aura was emitted from his Immortal Venerable Saint physique, causing the void around him to tremble. So powerful, this is no longer a clone in the ordinary sense. The clone was shocked. He knew that he had finally met his match today. This person before him was definitely not someone the previous people could compare to. When Lu Di Immortal Wang was outside, the South Pole Immortal Venerable left an indestructible clone on the island. When Lu Di Immortal Wang's life was in danger, this clone would take action. Encountering powerful enemies was a very common thing in the outside world. Lu Di Immortal Wang had encountered several extremely powerful existences in the past. It was thanks to the South Pole Immortal Venerable's clone that Lu Di Immortal Wang was not killed. Mph. Gu Fei's Immortal Venerable snorted without saying anything. At this time, the one with the stronger fist would survive. This was the law of the jungle in the cultivation world. "Big brother, quickly kill them." Lu Di Immortal Wang's voice resounded. He didn't want to waste any more time here. He still needed to enter the chaotic divine soil. However, Gu Fei had already become a sage. It was still unknown if the others could do the same. However, the South Pole Immortal Venerable had once told Lu Di Immortal Wang that there would be great changes in this generation. Nothing could be judged with common sense. This generation was full of variables. "You want to kill us? Dream on." He Tian spoke disdainfully. Although he didn't know why Gu Fei had another clone, he could tell that Gu Fei's clone was incredible. "You damned thief, don't let me catch you. Otherwise, I'll make you regret being born," Lu Xian Wang said with a ferocious expression. This little thief was truly despicable. He dared to sneak into his divine island and steal more than half of his divine items. "Haha, I'm so scared. Come if you have the guts." Erebus curled his finger at Lu Xian Wang and said without the slightest scruple. Lu Di Immortal Wang meant Lu Xian Wang's eyes widened in anger, and the veins on his forehead bulged. He almost couldn't help but charge at Mai Tian. "Fellow Daoist, calm down." Ziyang Unfettered stopped Lu Di Immortal Wang. He wanted to infuriate him. "You two can come at me together. I'll get rid of you at the same time. It'll save me the trouble of dealing with you one by one." He Tian looked at Lu Di Immortal Wang and Ziyang Unfettered provocatively. Runes appeared all over his body. With his current cultivation, he could set up many killing formations in an instant. "Dao brother Ziyang, since this guy wants to die, we'll help him." Lu Di Immortal Wang couldn't stand it anymore. This guy was too annoying. He wanted to tear him to pieces and take back all his divine items. "In that case, let's fight." As Ziyang spoke, he waved his right hand and a large purple seal immediately rushed up from the island below. The purple seal, which was as large as a mountain ridge, quickly shrunk and landed on Ziyang's right hand. Purple energy swirled around it. Dao runes could be vaguely seen. This seal had the aura of the great Dao, giving people a strong sense of oppression. It was as if they were facing an immemorial divine mountain. A divine item. He Tian's eyes lit up when he saw the fist-sized purple seal in Ziyang Unfettered's hand. "Treasure, come into my pocket." He Tian didn't hide his greed for the seal in Ziyang Unfettered's hand. He couldn't wait to rush forward and snatch it. This guy was the same as the old turtle in the heavenly realm. They were both greedy and greedy. As long as it was a treasure, he would do anything to get it. Boom. At this time, Gu Fei's Celestial Sovereign Holy Body and South Pole Celestial Sovereign's clone began fighting. A powerful explosion shook the entire starry sky. "I am the supreme under the starry sky. What makes you think you can fight me?" South Pole Celestial Sovereign's clone was extremely powerful. He directly drove the 18 stars to suppress Gu Fei's Celestial Sovereign Holy Body. Endless power of the stars gathered and the 18 stars sealed the sky, cutting off all paths of retreat for Ji Fei's celestial sovereign holy body. He Tian, Earth Immortal Elder, and the others quickly retreated. They didn't want to be involved in a battle of this level. With these fists of mine, celestial sovereign holy body shouted. He then swung his fists towards the 18 stars. A powerful force erupted, causing the 18 stars to tremble. What? South Pole Celestial Sovereign's clone was shocked by Ji Fei's combat strength. This opponent actually blocked his great art with his fists. Brute force can defeat everything. Even if your sorcery is heaven-defying, I can still break it with one punch. Ji Fei's Celestial Sovereign Holy Body said. The strength of the Celestial Sovereign Holy Body was definitely not inferior to Ji Fei's Martial Saint Body. The entire holy body was like a powerful saint weapon. Even if this celestial sovereign old ancestor of the Central Province Immortal Mana wasn't proficient in refining his physique, but his body was nourished by immortal spirit chi day and night. It shouldn't be any weaker than the martial saint body. Boom. Ji Fei's immortal reverent saint physique punched out again. This time, the 18 stars that sealed the 10 directions were shaken once again. Such a powerful force was truly heart-palpitating. It was hard to imagine that someone could actually use their body to fight against a saint artifact. The 18 stars were real stars. The South Pole Immortal Sovereign had used his great magic power to collect the 18 stars from the real universe and then refined them into a set of magic treasures. In other words, every single one of the 18 stars had the weight of a real star, but the opponent's strength could shake the stars. Chapter 22-26. Wah. Without these two old fogies, do you think I am a slug? He Tian shouted as he charged at Earth Immortal Father and Xiang Wanderer. Countless formation patterns appeared on his body and interweaved into a mysterious formation diagram. Boom. A shocking killing aura emerged as one after another killing formation after another was set up by He Tian. Every killing formation was gathering energy at a crazy speed, and the starry sky was shaking. Damned thief, hand over your life. Earth Immortal Father roared angrily. Yi Futian was too much of a bastard, and he actually dared to loot his palace. This made his hair stand on end, and he almost went crazy. He wanted to tear He Tian apart and suppress his divine soul for millions of years. Buzz. The void shook, and a black light rushed out of Earth Immortal Father's hand. He immediately used the yin-yang life and death mirror to shine at He Tian. Black represented death, and the power of death was vast. The mirror that was emitting the black light seemed to be connected to a terrifying hell. At this time, a yin-yang divine diagram appeared on He Tian's body, and the power of yin and yang surged out of his body. He cultivated the yin-yang Dao. He Tian used the yin-yang divine diagram to block the black light of death. PFFF. When the black light of death collided with the yin-yang divine diagram, there was only a soft sound, and the light of death was devoured by the yin-yang divine diagram. What? Earth Immortal Father was shocked when he saw this. Yi Futian cultivated the yin-yang Dao, and his divine mirror seemed to be unable to do anything to this thief. Rumble. Just as Earth Immortal Father was shocked, the void above He Tian's head suddenly shook. He Tian looked up and saw a huge seal emitting a monstrous purple light. It was like an ancient divine mountain pressing down on his head. That Xiang Wanderer had made his move. The seal was like a mountain, and it gave off an unshakable feeling. This shocked He Tian. There was a vague image of a mountain on the seal. Refining a mountain into a seal. Good move. He Tian's pupils involuntarily contracted. This seal was not simple, it was actually refined from a real primordial divine mountain, and the heavy aura of the primordial divine mountain almost suffocated here. The purple sun mountain seal is indeed powerful. At this moment, the Earth Immortal old man hurriedly retreated. This unfettered Ziyang came from an ancient power that was not any weaker than the South Pole Immortal Mana. Otherwise, this Ziyang Wanderer would not have the right to call Earth Immortal Wang brother. The seal seemed to have transformed into a primordial divine mountain. Terrifying ripples of power descended from the sky, directly destroying the void. This was the power of a saint. You think I'm afraid of you? He Tian flipped his right hand, and a golden sword immediately appeared in his hand. Buzz! The golden sword vibrated. It seemed to be stimulated by the huge seal that was pressing down from the sky. The power it contained actually showed signs of awakening. A shocking sword chi was emitted from the sword. Under the impact of the cold sword chi, the surrounding temperature dropped rapidly. Sacred artifact. Seeing the Saint Emperor's golden dragon sword in He Tian's hands, Immortal Lu and Zi Yang were both shocked. He Tian also wielded a saint weapon. This was going to be troublesome. Roar! Mahakala wielded the divine sword in his hand with all his might. He gripped the sword with both hands and swung it upwards with all his might. A dazzling golden sword light immediately surged out of his hand, transforming into a golden dragon that charged towards the purple Sun Mountain seal. This Saint Emperor's golden dragon sword was not an ordinary sword. It was a killing weapon refined by a Saint Emperor. A Saint Emperor was an emperor among saints, comparable to an immortal sovereign. Although He Tian had not become a saint and could not truly unleash the power of this sword, when he activated it with all his strength, the power it could unleash was enough to make the world lose its color. Boom! With an earth-shattering sound, the dragon formed by the golden holy sword collided with the primordial divine mountain formed by the seal. Destructive power swept out, creating a huge hole in the starry sky. The aura of the outside world seeped in. The power of a saint was wreaking havoc. Even the endless starry sky created by the South Pole Immortal Sovereign's clone was affected and pierced through. The moment the starry sky was pierced, the South Pole Immortal Sovereign's clone that was fighting against Gu Fei's Immortal Sovereign's sacred body suddenly shuddered. At this moment, a fist smashed into the South Pole Immortal Sovereign's nose. The South Pole Immortal Sovereign's clone's face collapsed as though it had no bones. PFFF. The South Pole Immortal Sovereign's clone's head was directly smashed by Gu Fei's sacred body. There was no scene of blood splattering. The South Pole Immortal Sovereign's clone's head dissipated into the void like air. Buzz! The moment Gu Fei's Immortal Sovereign's sacred body smashed the South Pole Immortal Sovereign's clone's head, the clone formed a seal with both hands. The void trembled, and 9 primordial Tao patterns condensed into an ancient diagram that pressed towards Gu Fei's Immortal Sovereign's sacred body. Gu Fei instinctively felt danger. The divine diagram formed by the 9 primordial Tao patterns had an unfathomable power. It seemed like this power had already surpassed the 9 Tao patterns. Swish! Gu Fei's Immortal Sovereign's sacred body immediately retreated, leaving behind a series of afterimages in the void. In an instant, he retreated 100 miles away with extreme speed. Buzz! The void was still trembling. The 9 primordial Tao patterns interweaved into a Tao pattern that gradually grew bigger and continued to suppress Gu Fei's Immortal Sovereign's sacred body. The entire endless starry sky seemed to be fixed by that ancient Tao pattern. Gu Fei's Immortal Sovereign's sacred body felt that the endless starry sky seemed to have some kind of connection with that Tao pattern. This was definitely not a good thing for Gu Fei's Immortal Sovereign's sacred body. As expected, as the Tao pattern grew bigger, all the stars in the starry sky lit up. Endless power of the stars gathered towards the Tao pattern. At this moment, Gu Fei's Immortal Sovereign's sacred body felt like it was trapped in a cage. It couldn't escape the suppression of this ancient Tao pattern. Could this South Pole Immortal Sovereign really be an ancient Immortal Sovereign? Otherwise, how could he have such means? Gu Fei's Immortal Sovereign's sacred body was extremely shocked. This was just an South Pole Immortal Sovereign's clone, and it was already so powerful. If his true body descended, wouldn't it be even more powerful and terrifying? At this moment, the head of the South Pole Immortal Sovereign's clone that was blasted apart by Gu Fei reassembled itself. It was as though it had never been blasted apart.